Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for joining us for tonight for the Gray Area. I'm Mr. Bennett, and my sidekick, as always, as the Ghost of Sparta, aka Grooming and Reviews 101, aka Peter, aka Panagiotis. Good evening, my brother. How are you doing?
What's going on, man?
Good to see you. Good to see you. So I see you came armed and ready for battle tonight again. But this is not a this. Oh, that's a real one. That's
Oh yeah, yeah, it's metal, dude. I'm not joking.
man.
Not antique metal, but good enough. This fucker's heavy, actually, too. Hey, I can
Good
probably knock out
exercise.
BMU with this pretty easily.
That's a good exercise for your neck. It looks like, man.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
Listen,
Good stuff.
disclosure. Anybody gets on my nerves, I'm putting that damn helmet on. I'm going Sparta on anybody's. So you better behave.
Well, look, how can anyone be afraid of the helmet, man? You need the sword. Where's the sword, man?
I'm working on that.
With the,
Listen.
with the,
This
with the
was
junior
expensive
knives
enough.
and all that.
Yeah, it's not actual real one. It's a replica one, but
I
my
got you.
dream
I
is to
got
get a
you.
real one. I actually want to get like a real Greek armor and it's
Hmm.
Japanese armor. And was walking
Right.
in my house like, did I work in a museum or a house here?
I'm still amazed by how they were able to fight in those things. I mean, can you imagine putting
Super
on
heavy.
there's no padding. I mean, like even like with sports, like the NFL, right? Like
Mhm.
if you go back to the 50s and 60s, they played in those plastic helmets that had the suspension in them. There was no padding at all or whatever. I'm like, how the guys even were able to play? By the time I played football, they had the helmets came a long way and they had the foam padding all up in them and whatnot. So you were less. You still got to worry about concussions and everything. But I mean, how did people play? In such archaic equipment back then. I mean, just the comfort level, and plus you had usually had like a chain mail underneath or something like that.
Yeah.
So they were definitely not made for comfort. So the
Yeah, I
fact that these
know
guys were able to
these
do that was
Greeks
amazing.
did not use chainmail in their armor, but I know other cultures did, like English in down the England side of the country. That's sort of Europe, but they use chainmail over there. Ireland used chainmail. Some other countries did too, but Greek was one of the few ones who did it for some reason. They use the old whole pure metal, one piece. Obviously, had the arm exposed and stuff like that. You're muted, but you're muted.
So I'm thinking those scars. I mean, just the scraping of the skin against the metal itself and whatnot. The
Yeah,
scarring must have been brutal back then. In
yeah. And
addition to you
actually,
fighting for your
believe
life.
it or not, not most armors were made out of pure metal. They were leather.
Hmm. Yeah, that I can see making
Yeah,
sense. So if you did something where you had like a metal, like a leather underlayer, and then you had the metal on top as an
yeah.
additional perspective. So good evening, Stacy B79. Thank you for joining us this evening. For those who are you in the chat joining us for the first time, again, I know it's playoff weekend. I know the Detroit Lions are on the verge of an epic collapse. I don't know if we may see JT this week, but I'm feeling for you, JT. If the Lions wind up losing this game, Giants. I mean, the Lions have never been to the Super Bowl, and this was the opportunity to do so. But certainly things have certainly taken a turn for the worse in the second half. But shout out to JT and the BMU Network, and again for everyone who's joining us tonight for this dialogue and conversation. Thank you for joining us. If you see at the bottom, you see our cash apps are scrolling at the bottom of the screen. So certainly, by all means, if you are so willing, you can certainly send myself and grooming, anything that you give us, we appreciate. We're just grateful that you took time out of your Sunday night, because I also know people got to get ready for work on Monday. That you took the time out to be with us this evening. So thank you very much for that, and hopefully more people stream in and just even just say stop by and say hello, and to just see what's going on over here. But with that, definitely looking forward to another conversation. I mean, so far, I mean, the first two shows I think have been killer. I mean, certainly,
I agree.
first show we dealt with education, different educational systems between the two, between Greeks and Americans, and the second show we dealt with this concept of marriage, which we went over a whole range of subjects. I'm still blown away. In fact, we may have to revisit some of that tonight, because today we're talking about growing up
I
and one
think
area.
some of
Yeah,
them are going to jump into the next episode and come back and forth kind of thing, because
gotcha.
a lot of topics are kind of like they mesh
They're gonna
together. If that
intersect.
makes
Yeah, they're gonna intersect for sure,
yeah.
for sure. But that one topic we talked about with the boys going to the brothels, or it's a tradition for fathers to send their boys to the brothels to get their education, if you will. That was something I wasn't that was something I was expecting. So we may broach some of that subject a little bit more tonight. But tonight we're going to be talking about growing up, and I think um, coming off of the marriage discussion, this might be a good way to lead it off. So we talked about how people get arranged. Usually people meet through family, friends, uh,
Hmm.
and whatnot, and it is a courting process. The family doesn't necessarily apply pressure, but there's pressure, if you will. And weddings are pretty elaborate. The ceremony themselves, there's the headwear that people wear. That sort of joins them together. It's like two crowns with a rope or a
Yep.
string in the middle. So we've had the wedding ceremony, and so now you have married, your honeymoon or whatever. Now you're into married life. So we can probably pick up the growing up discussion from there. So typically, in Greek culture, my first question for you this evening is, when it comes to family life or having children, is that something that is typically done right away, or even before that? Do you see a lot of weddings where the lady might be pregnant before the wedding or what have you, or do people usually take their time from the time to get married to having their first child? Is there do they kind of get to it right away? Is there a period there?
See, that is a multiple question answer. The reason I say that is because have I seen people, like teen pregnancy, for example, in high school?
Mhm.
No, but that was when I was
No.
in school.
Okay.
Okay,
Got you. All right.
but have I seen, like, good example? My mom's best friend. She was pregnant, had her first child before she was married, and
Hmm.
now she's married to the guy, and then she had her second child afterwards. So it
Hmm.
really depends on the couple and on the person.
Right.
One, I'm gonna use Hank's good example. Protect yourself at all times. You do
Yeah.
not know what you're doing, what you're getting yourself into. Sometimes you really don't.
Right. Right. Right.
And sometimes she might be a great woman,
Hmm.
but you may not be compatible.
Right.
That's going in any culture. I don't care what you're talking about. Greek, Black, Japanese, Chinese, Asian, Mars, Pluto, whatever you're from.
Right.
It could be anywhere, and I think that's something me and you agree on right now.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's certainly something where I'm asking more so
Mhm.
from the societal perspective, like how much pressure is there regarding, again, if a woman's pregnant, let's say, for example, for the man to marry the woman, whatever, when she's pregnant. I know you also talked about
So
how deletions are pretty common over there as well. So just in terms of how the culture and society, how that factors into when individuals have to make decisions about whether or not to go ahead with the wedding or to stay together or go their separate ways or what have you. So how does that typically work?
so when I was younger, I
Mhm,
remember it was a lot of pressure of people saying, "When you're gonna have kids? When are you have babies? When are you gonna have grandkids? When?"
mhm,
So to if you, for example, let's say it happened and you got your woman pregnant before you got married,
mhm.
is 99.9% chance you're gonna end up marrying her.
Okay, okay,
There's like if you were able to, leave a seed in her, you are man enough to marry her. No
right,
excuses.
right. And that pressure typically comes from the man's family, the woman's
Both,
family, or the both. Okay,
both.
so they yeah, so they kind of
Yeah,
come to
because the whole teen pregnancy or single mom thing or whatever, it doesn't really exist when I was growing up in Greece. Now
mhm,
I watch on TV and news. It's not common, but it's okay. It happens.
right.
Like the teen pregnancy still does not happen in Greece, but I'm talking about single moms in their 20s and 30s.
Yeah,
Can happen, but not
yeah.
as often.
Yeah, you would expect. Now, did we talk also about the typical marrying age of a man and a woman in Greece as opposed to
No,
America?
actually,
I think in America, last I checked, I think the average age, I think it's like 27 for the man and 25 for the woman. I can certainly verify that, but from Greek standards, what's typically the ages for men and women to marry, based on your experience or based what you know statistically on that?
you're going to fall off your seat when I tell you this. Is around my age, 38 and up.
To get married?
Yeah, later, because you're not mature enough to say. So think about it. So remember I told you last week, divorce rates are lower in Greece. I think I said what I think like 21% or something like that. I can't remember the number to be actually.
Right.
Think about it. If you get married older, at least for men, I know I was a hothead when I was younger. Like I
Mhm.
used to jump off the handles like that, but now
Right.
I'm more calm, collect, talk, take my time to talk to somebody. You mature more. And now I
Mhm.
definitely know what I want out of life. But you asked me when I was 21, 22, 23.
Right.
I have no idea really. I just know I want to make money. That's
That's
it.
crazy though. You're talking about Greek men, right? Not the women, because
And women.
but they're in geriatric pregnancy by that time, and they're still holding on.
Yeah. So, okay. So, women will get married younger. Yes. Let's not deny that. But most common is more older in their 30s. It starts in the early 30s, 40s. In their 20s, they're still partying, going out, having fun. Have some people met in a young age? Yeah, I'm not denying that, but it's not as common as here. I think the one reason why we have a divorce rate so high it is now because a lot of people get married very young. Like I know a few people. I know, like I think count 5 people off my hand right now that I told you they got married right out of high school. They're divorced with a kid. Not because anything happened to their marriage. They get along great with their ex-wives. They were not compatible. They grew apart. You're on mute again. You're on mute. You're still on mute.
Just my experience, because I'm typing, so I don't want to hear the when I'm doing that. But
Yeah, you're having
my,
a muting problem tonight.
yeah, I just looked at stats for the U.S. So the average, so as of 2022, average marrying age for a man in America is 30.5 years, and the average woman is 28.6. Based on the
Mhm.
averages there. Now in Greece, it is like you said, from what I'm seeing, it's either about the same, or like you said, it might be a little bit older for Greeks, which is surprising to me. I thought that Greek women may be getting married like around like teenagers. You know what I mean? Like young, uh, you know 21 and whatnot. But certainly people are definitely holding off on marriage until later. That I did not know. That's a really surprised me. So what are people doing then in the meantime? So I mean, you do have a logic problem, because if we talk about we talked about in the other show that typically people date to marry.
Mhm.
That's number one, and the expectation. Since you also come from a Greek Orthodox culture as well, for people to marry, if you're going to wait until like you're 38 years old, then obviously people are not staying separate from the time you turn teenager to so you're talking 20 plus years of singleness for the most part. So people, they got to be hooking up. So we can't say that Greeks are not doing
The
having
nasty.
relations. Having relations was good. Blazing McCrory, good to thanks for dropping by tonight and seeing us. And appreciate, again, anybody, again, you don't have to, you can stay for the whole show and for the whole ride. Great. Again, this will be certainly be available on replay, and you can certainly watch it. But again, we so much appreciate when people join us live and be part of the conversation and part of the chat. It really, we get a lot of our ideas from the chat. And so, when you guys come in and support us like that, again, it really means a lot to us. But again, if you got to pass and bounce, I do plenty of that. There's so many podcasts out there. I can't be on all of them myself. So appreciate you stopping by. But yeah, but so people are certainly dating and hooking up and whatnot in Greece. And when they do decide to get married, it's typically going to be later. And but are there issues though with a woman who's, like, say, over 35, having children, or especially if she's having children for the first time? Is that a health issue that you see Greek women running into,
Actually,
who
no,
wait
I
so
haven't
long?
really seen that. That's the funny part. Like I've seen a lot of healthy kids coming out of there.
Hmm.
I'm gonna say one of the biggest reasons is because most of the I'm going to food. What I know very well about is we don't pump our meats with all these steroids.
Mm,
So that's what definitely one thing your body will take a factor.
right.
Think about it. You're pumping yourself with all that stuff. Something's gonna give. It's gonna be your sperm donor or the person who's actually carrying it. Either way. So I know a bunch of women in Greece who had their kid very younger, and they're fine.
Wow. Yeah,
They
that's
healthy babies.
that's positive. And we can certainly revisit
Mhm.
the meat topic for sure because I know you said you want to do a food topic one day, and
Of course.
certainly I would certainly definitely look forward to doing that so we can get into the dietary because all my life I've heard about the Mediterranean diet and whatnot. So I want to see how that jives with what's actually promoted actually over what's actually the culture of the people in the Mediterranean and Greece in particular.
Mhm.
So certainly that'd be a topic we could certainly go over. Um, but the idea that people once you're married, once you have settled down, you establish a home for yourself, and you decide to have children. Now, what is from your experience on average? How many children? Like here in America, is actually it's actually the birth rate is dropping significantly, and I think that's what's driving a lot of the conservative political drivers in the nation. Because the people are worried. I mean, because the average, the statistic is you need to have 1.6 kids in order to maintain a society, like to keep the population stable. 1.6, and obviously people can't have 1.6, so you're basically talking about two children. Essentially, you're a man and woman, and you basically replace yourselves that you have to keep that going. And you see a lot of populations in the world where the birth rates are dropping. Some of it just due to overpopulation, or a lot of times what happens is as society advances, as more women, for example, join the workforce, that they become more less likely to have more children. I mean, certainly back in the day when people were farmers and laborers and whatnot. You had a house full of kids. Like I said, I come from 13. My dad came from 13, and my mom came from 9. So big families. From the deep South, especially because they all grew up on farms. So that was certainly something that um, you see the trend line going downward in terms of just the average number of kids people have. So here in the U.S. is like I said, the numbers have dropped out. I think in the 50s, I might have been. I think the average was because I looked this up in the last show. I think it was around like average around 3.5 to 4 children, like in the 60s, and now it's dropped down into the twos, like the low twos, when it comes to childbirths. But what about Greece? So a Greek household, typically, how many members are going to be inside? And then also, when you answer that one, speak to a typical Greek household. Like, is it multi generational? Is it singular? So speak to the general size of a house, and then whether or not there's extended members in it or not.
All right, so from my experience, what I grew up with at least, I always saw between 2 to 3, kids in a household.
Okay.
Sometimes they're older, sometimes they're younger, mixed mode. Good example, 2 of my neighbors, 3 of my neighbors, excuse me, across the street, one was 2 big sisters and 1 younger brother. The other one was 3 girls, pyramid. The other one on top of them lived there was 2 brothers. My other
Right.
buddy who lived about a block away was him and his brother. A couple other friends of mine, like say Costas, for example, it was him and his sister. So between 2 and 3, I would say the average. Now, cross generation, that is an interesting one you just brought up
Yeah.
because it's very common. The house, let's say my grandma had, my grandpa and grandfather built,
Hmm.
passed it down to my mother.
Okay.
So it's average for them to live there to the day they die
Right.
because it's known. A lot of people will know this. The My generation will take care of the old generation. That's how we
Hmm.
were raised.
Right.
So even to today, I made it publicly clear, like to you and anybody else, that I take care of my mom who has
Right.
cancer. So
Right.
that's normal for me.
Right.
But I realize here that is not normal. They say to me, like,
Yeah, and it's
go
a
ahead.
very different model here, and
Mhm.
it is, I think, certainly for the Black American community in particular. I think it's been very detrimental in that we used to. It's weird. Like back in the day, you would have that concept of the multi generational home in part because nobody had anything. So it was almost like it's like especially when you see immigrants come to the country now, especially from Latin American countries and whatnot, you see like how they're able to pool their resources. I mean, just down the street, we have Latin families all over, but it's like you see nothing but cars, in the home. It's shout out to Lady Novoa came in. Shout out to Trey who also joined us. Now I'm 1-1, Trey, because again I did pick the Kansas City to beat the Ravens, so I'm 1-1. But I was definitely looking forward to an 0 to an 0-2. But thanks for stopping through and hanging out with us today for sure. But Lady Navoa always supports the chat, always supports the channels. Thank you for being with us tonight as well. But
Trey, yes to your answer, by the way. Yes, Greeks are freaks. I have to throw it out there.
we'll talk about that in a subsequent show. That might be at the end if we get if we get
Time.
through these. We may visit the sex conversation. But yeah, I mean, back in the day, you had to pull your resources together just because you didn't have the resources. So again, like I said last week, my dad, when he we married my mom after he got out of the military, he came up here. He got a job with Western Electric, which is part of the AT&T and Bell system and whatnot. He
Mhm.
bought a house on the GI Bill. It's this big, giant 2-family house. And what would happen was the relatives of mine, they decided to move for this house because again, back then, there wasn't a lot of opportunities unless you either were the farmer, or you worked in a factory, or you moved north because that's where the opportunities were. A lot of people from the south moved to the north for greater opportunities, and when they came up here, they would stay with my parents and they would, work. They find jobs. We had a big Ford plant up here. We had a GM plant up here. A lot of factories and whatnot. So they would stay with my parents, and then at a certain time, they would once they got established, they would then buy their own house, move out, and buy their own homes and whatnot. But there were so many families that my parents helped out. In part, someone helped my dad out when he came up here. He had stayed with some family members when he got up here until he got himself established. So he decided, he wanted to certainly pass it on. So that was just a thing that people did. And you always grew up in a household either in the same like duplex or you had houses right next to each other. And so again, you grew up with a lot of your cousins and a lot of your people. Now, by the time I was born, a lot of that dynamic had dropped significantly because, like I said, my parents had split up around the time of my birth, around 1970. That's when my parents split. So I didn't grow up in the atmosphere that a lot of my siblings talked about, but a lot of their cousins, yeah, they all kind of grew up together, and so you had that sense of community and neighborhood, and with your kin folks. So but today everyone is such an individual. Everyone's like, I got to have my own house and my own place, and whatnot. Even though it's crazy to especially when you think about average rent in this area is like $1,500 at minimum, and you're not getting a whole lot for that. And so, but kids are like in such a hurry to sort of move out and whatnot. So that is definitely something that I think is hurting a lot of people because they saw the whole idea of being independent, American independence, and getting out on your own and doing things on your own. That's something I think that's hurting us in a lot of respects. So the fact that in Greek culture there's at least some, and I'm sure there's modernization there to a certain
Mhm.
extent, but the fact that some people still maintain like a family multi-family, multi-generational structure, I think is what really helps keeps the culture together and what keeps the society together. So that's definitely something that Americans in general and African Americans in particular, we definitely have moved away from in a lot of ways. We may take care of our parents, but having a like the grandparents also in the house is like, no, I got to get my own stuff. That's just a mindset that even my kids are giving me that now. They're talking about, you just graduated college, you want to move out. It's like, with what? Know, in the
So I want to touch
tri-state
on
area,
base
New
on some of
York,
this
New
stuff.
Jersey. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
I want to touch on base. Okay, so
Yeah.
the housing in Greece is a little different than like living next to it. It's mostly duplex, meaning like your parents or your grandparents might buy the bottom one, then you're gonna be built on top of them. Then
Mm.
the next generation is gonna be on top of it, so they're all in one big complex, pretty much, and that's
So the
very
houses, they
common.
actually build a house on top of each other.
Yeah, they're because of that. The roof is flat in Greece. It's not a triangle, and they're made of
Okay.
concrete too.
Wow.
So the biggest reason we build houses in concrete when one house burns, the next one doesn't burn. Just a little hint to Americans. Concrete
Right.
doesn't burn that well as wood.
Well,
Just a little hint
again,
there.
they used to do that. Go to any of these brownstones
I know. I'm
communities.
being a smart ass a little bit too.
But there's something to be said for that
Yeah.
because
I think
everything is
somebody
like
said that. What was it?
dimensional.
One of the barbershop episodes. He said the same thing I'm saying right now. We build in wood as hell and burn. But having our family, the freedom, the freedom. That's a nice. You still can have freedom in
Right.
your own home with your parents living here or your grandparents or whatever, because you could have your little section. You could have the basement, for example,
Hmm.
or you build in more on top, whatever. You got your little section. Even though you have your little man cave there or your room, doesn't mean you can't have freedom come and go as you want. What put yourself in debt? This is what I don't understand with this Americanized culture.
Hmm.
You're putting yourself in debt.
Yeah.
You want a BMW? Man, I want that fucking M3 so fucking bad. I'm gonna get all that. I'm gonna get all the chicks. You pull up to the bar, and nobody cares a flying fuck where you drive because they're not gonna see your car too. After you wasted a couple $100 on drinks, you
Yeah.
bring them home for what? You're not getting that money back. There's no investment into that.
Right.
Okay, you can
Right.
tell me a car is an investment. Okay, but an apartment is an investment. Okay, I'll give you that. But why put yourself in investment in an apartment that you're spending some money? Like, let's say, pose my landlord. I'm paying his bill right now. Except me staying at home, saving money, and buying a bigger property. Let's say I own only half an acre. And a couple years
Right.
later, I have enough money. I
Right.
could buy 10 acres, put 4 fucking houses on there, maybe 1 people for rent and 3 for my family.
Yeah.
Again, maybe I'm just being a dumb Greek here
No,
thinking like
no,
this,
no.
but
It's like I said, it's what you're talking about. What I think a lot of modern Greek people, what they understand is again what Americans used to do. Certainly a lot more than what they're doing now. But again, I think part of it is America itself. The this is it's this isn't the birth of capitalism, but this
yeah.
is like hyper capitalism on steroids. And so again, the consumerism that people have, the drive to be an individual, to do your own thing. Those things are certainly looked on, and I see it with again immigrant families. Like I said, a lot of my friends are from India. They came here in the '80s, so they're all in the same age, and our kids, like I said, grew up together, and they see it in the kids. Like
Mhm.
the kid, it's as soon as they get jobs or whatever, as soon as they graduate to get a job, they want to move. Now, Nick, if you got to move for a job halfway across the country, that's a different thing. I know one of my friends, his daughter got a job with Boeing, and so she's up in Seattle right now. So but they gave her decent package and everything. But yeah, this idea of being around the family, and so many folks from India that I know, they grew up again they own like the whole corner, the whole every building was like family members. So it was like it was common for people to grow up with like 20, 30 cousins, and they were like, I didn't need to have friends. Salute to Mandrell. What's going on, my brother? Good to see you tonight. Um, they were like, I didn't have to have any friends. We didn't have to have friends growing up because all my friends were my cousins. You know what I'm saying? So when they had to, get out in university or work life or whatever, it was like, it was kind of socially awkward for them because they didn't have to go out and actually meet someone and say, "Hey, my name is so and so," and and develop a friendship. But the family was the structure that kept everything together. So I think it's an American issue that families don't have that connectiveness. And I've seen it. I've shared this story so many times now on the platforms. A Sierra Leone family, good friend of my daughter's. We went to a party there, and that was the first time I ever been to like an African party. And again, that atmosphere. I mean, there's so many cousins, and there was so much connection there. But you know, the young people, they're like, oh, I don't want to have to live. I don't mind coming to the parties, but I don't want to have to live with all my relatives. it's, so I think it's certainly something about the culture that uh, makes people want to step out as an individual. But again, acting as an individual, for those who can pull it off is one thing, but I think we lose something culturally and collectively that we wouldn't be able to do elsewise. And again, so you're asking why someone's going to spend all the money on a BMW or some clothing or whatever it is. Again, there's a price to pay for that, and a lot of it is the when we talk about the low marriage rates and a lot of things that are going on. I think we're losing something. So the fact that Greeks still have that sense of connection is something that's relevant. But I'll ask you,
Mhm.
being that you lived in Greece and saw it up close, and living in America. So how do native Greeks operate as opposed to Greek Americans when it comes to that? Or is there still very much a desire to kind of keep those connections and multifamily and multi generational, or are they being affected by the American ethos, if you will, also?
It's funny because I just had this conversation last night with my mother right before my stream,
Hmm.
and the conversation we're having is talking about future buying property. Keyword buying.
Yeah.
So all the Greeks I know, I call them off the plane, but I can't say off the boat because it's off the
Off
plane.
the plane.
Off
Okay.
the
Right.
plane are very old school mentality about this. Saying I'm gonna, do the best I can to raise my kids and have a future for them.
Hmm.
So property needs a future there. Maybe buying a duplex, or you can put like a mini mall or something that brings back money. They're always thinking of that money.
It's a good question. Is it more or less expensive to raise a family in Greece now compared to years ago?
Actually, it's a very good question. Yes. So Greece is very expensive ever since they switched over to euro, and I felt the
Ah,
transition,
okay.
and that's a
Okay.
whole topic for a whole
When did
different
they do
day. But
that? What year did they do that?
oh god, what year was that?
Is that the 90s?
2003, 2004, I believe, was it?
Mm.
I gotta double check that. I'm not 100%. Hang on, I gotta look right now.
Yeah, go ahead.
But
I'll look it up. You go ahead. Yeah,
yeah,
I
thank
can
you.
look it up.
So as Greece got very expensive. Like I remember people with their cell phones and when they're doing the conversion. Okay, 20 drachma comes to equal to, and they're still charging you as a drachma, but asking it in euro. But the value of drachma it doesn't exist anymore
It was
after
2001. Just
2001. Thank you.
2001 when yeah.
So then we never balanced ourselves out. So it was going like the money was coming in, but living expenses went higher and higher and higher and higher. Like a
Mhm.
2-bedroom apartment, like could go to up to like almost 3 grand a month. 3 grand.
Yeah.
That's a lot. And that's talking about in the countryside. Forget Athens as the main capital. So I remember somebody telling me, "Oh man, I gotta save some money up now. I gotta fix my daughter's computer." Like, oh, what's wrong with it, man? Maybe I can fix it. I'm like, and it was something I couldn't do it. He goes, "Yeah, it's gonna cost me like 20 euro. That's cheap." I'm thinking to myself. I was talking to my mom, like, and she goes, "No, 20 euro equals to be like $100 at the time."
It
I'm
goes
like,
up. It goes the
"Oh,
other way.
that explains a lot." Then I remember buying cigarettes when I was still smoking back then. It cost me $1.50 for a pack. $1.50.
That's pretty good.
Now you're looking at 20.50
$20.50 for a pack of
in
cigarettes
euro. In euro, remember that?
in euros, and
Yes.
that okay. Wow.
So it comes out
I mean,
20
US
euro.
dollars, that's like 20, that's like 23, $24, right?
Yeah, now the euro and the dollar are matching. It was one by one on one. At one time, you can bring $100 to Greece, right, and double that to 200 or even 300 sometimes.
Mm,
Now you can't do that. It's not a
right.
match dollar to dollar right now. It could eventually it might be again dollar might be up here, Greek euro be down there. That's why I always laughed at people saying, "Oh man, I can't wait to go to Greece." Like, yeah, you can afford it very easily. The plane ticket is the most expensive thing. To be honest with you, and I break it down to them like, really? Like, yeah. And a year later, they're on a plane going to Greece, vacation time, whole package. Now it's like it's matching.
Right. So Greece and overall, because I know a friend of mine, he just went to Greece this
Mhm.
past year. So, but we didn't talk about the cost, but as far as a tourist going in, it's a pretty expensive destination to stay in. It's not certainly not as cheap as when you were there, and
Yeah.
that
He will not
definitely
know the
takes some
difference
money.
because he's a tourist and he will know the difference. Like, is it cheap or is it expensive? He doesn't know because he doesn't
Mhm.
live there.
Right.
Like somebody like us, we go to Washington, D.C., for example. I have a couple friends down there. I'm in there. To us, it might be expensive because we know what the value is, but somebody
Yeah,
else might not be.
that's true. Wow. That's something. That's something. So I guess getting back to, I guess we're going as far as the combo. So again, typically you said yes that Greeks kind of live together. It's expected that children take care of their parents and whatnot. Do you have like generationally? Is it so? It's pretty common to have three generations in the same home:
Oh god,
grandparents,
yeah,
parents, and
yeah,
yeah,
100%, yes.
yeah.
And
I mean, we
I'm
yeah.
gonna say something off the limb. People who have not lived there go through take care of the older generation.
Hmm.
Number one, Greeks are very fucking hard headed. I'm gonna put it out there. They're so hard headed
Hmm.
that is not even funny.
Hmm.
If you tell them, like, I go to example, use my mother for example. If you say, "Hey, mom, it's night outside," no, it's day. But we know it's night outside. She will
Right,
argue that.
right,
But what is most stressful is trying to get through them, saying, "Listen, you got to stop eating bread because you're diabetic." I'm using that for example, of course.
right, right.
It's a hard head. It's like they will argue tooth and nail.
Hmm.
The most hardest part is the mental game, trying to not to lose your temper. Like
Now,
you know,
what do you think that comes from? Is it just I mean, it's just something that's been passed down? Is it
pass down,
because
100%, 100%. Because I give you a good example. My grandmother was very, very hard headed.
hmm
Guess who's very, very hard headed? My mother.
hmm
I'm lucky enough to say I see the signs there
hmm
and actually address them in myself.
right,
Like, if we sit here, let me say you example, we're having a conversation about cars, for argument's sakes,
yeah,
and you tell me it has a stereo, let's say STS. I'm just throwing names out there, and I'm like, no, it's definitely Sony, and every car comes out of Hyundai. But you know for a fact, on paper and everything, is that I usually take it to step back, show me the facts. If you show me the facts, I have nothing to argue with you about.
right.
But if you show them a facts to agree, because they're like, "Where are you, fucking Malaka?" No, this is how it is. They will not budge. It's very hard to actually win a fight against a Greek. This is why ancient Greeks, they always use a win a fight.
Right, right. So even facts. Now, I'm hoping or I'm assuming that this is changing with younger generations. I guess with millennials or Gen Zs. Are they inheriting that same stubbornness? Or I mean, because you would say to even yourself, you're more rational than maybe
Mhm.
where your mother was, and hoping when you have children, then you want they'll be more rational than you are. But do you see that with younger people? Are they more open to, and because here, I mean, that's all America is right now. It is a constant battle with every generation over everything. Did Gen X mess it up? Did baby boomers mess it up? The millennials and Gen Zers are blaming us for everything. It's a constant cultural war or generational war between the generations there. But do you see as much of that in Greece, or young people's views changing on in terms of societal or cultural issues or whatnot that would have been an anathema to your parents or your grandparents, but now younger people are more, accepting of certain things, whatever. Do you have those kind of cultural wars that you have here?
I'm going to answer that the best way I can, but it'll be a
Sure.
complicated answer. So, you know how here we say, we blame the generation. We always point the finger at the younger
Hmm.
generation. Always say
Hmm.
a young man or young woman or young lady and so on. We don't use those words in Greece because you are responsible. As responsible you are, it's also your responsibility as an older old fart to
Hmm.
teach the younger
Hmm.
ones. So we
Right.
don't use that words. Like, I never heard of them at least. And now
Hmm.
the the difference between generations, I don't see it. We listen to our elders. Same thing as other cultures like Japanese and Chinese. They listen to the
Hmm.
elders. If you talk back, you get back smacked. Simple. So that doesn't happen. You have some of those little punk asses that think they're tough and big and tough, puff the chest
Right.
up. You know what I'm talking about. We have them here
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Out of 20 kids, you may get 1% to do that. Not
Hmm.
much.
Right.
But the biggest problem they have, they want to express themselves a little more. And parents have they hold back. Like tattoos. I'll go with that example. Like when tattoos first came to the country, like they were like, no, 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 not in this house.
Hmm.
Now it's more accepted. I
It's more
had a
accepted now.
conversation with a friend of mine actually, and she goes, "Listen, Pete, I love my parents, but I need to get I need fresh air." So she had a good opportunity to do her job to move to a different state and get a great pay. She goes, "I miss living with my family." She was like crying for 3 months about it.
Mm.
I made a mistake. I told her, "Listen, take a deep breath, hold up. And now she's married and met a great guy in that process.
Mhm.
And she goes, I needed that room, but I missed him. So she had to find the middle ground. But we were late about stuff like this. Like, wow, I don't understand how people talk to their parents like that. Or how they do this. How people blame each other.
Mhm.
There's no reason to blame anybody. If somebody did something wrong, teach them. Like, maybe you don't know how to change a flat tire. Or my favorite one. No offense, but I gotta give you shit for this one. A lot of people in New Jersey don't know how to pump gas. Teach
Right.
the person.
Mhm.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
What happened about teaching somebody? I'm like, I hear this in my job all the time, my line of work. It's just, I don't want to teach him something. Like, why not? I'm scared I'm gonna lose my job. If you're that damn fucking good, there's nothing to scare about.
Mhm.
You do it. You teach because
Right.
it's the right thing to do. Pass
Right.
on the knowledge. Pass the
Right.
experience.
Right. You're
And
starting
that's
to
it.
get me to think about, and I've heard it done or said, in
Mhm.
sometimes in conspiratorial ways or whatever. But there's always someone always talking about. It seems like in at least in the U.S., there's almost like there's forces at work to keep us divided in one way or the other. Like people are profiting off of keeping people divided, whether it be racially, generationally, sexually, whatever it is. It just seems like there's forces that constantly driving division, so people can't come together. And so it seems like what Greece is, it looks like it has still going forward that for the most part. And again, this may change in the next 20 years. It seems like where Greece is, America was at some point, that you still have, again, the family unit, the multi-family unit, the generational, the teaching, passing knowledge and wisdom from one generation to the next. For the most part, it's still intact in Greece. And you're also, even for those who are here in the US, there's still there's still evidence that that's still going on. But I would have to think it's still more difficult here to maintain that societal standard here in America, where everything in your face is like rebellion, or you know forget you, I'm gonna go and do my own thing or whatever. It's got to be harder here for Greek immigrants, or of those of Greek descent, to maintain those same standards here when kids are being influenced by so many other things here.
I agree. Because the influence is everything, if you think about it. This is why I know I'm gonna get shit for this in the comments. I'm okay with it. Is I believe in the old cartoons for a minute. The reason I say that, if you
Mhm.
remember the old GI Joe movies,
Sure
people
do.
used to sit and watch them, and it was like a story. The story is saying in the end, like, don't do this, don't do drugs, don't steal, do the right thing. It was always a little story. Even Action Man had a story in the end, a
Mhm.
lesson of the day. What happened to that lesson?
Yeah. Shout out to brother Hank joining us in the chat tonight, and scam likely. All right, so we might be in for it tonight, because just looking at the his initial comments, I'm going to predict a dust storm might be coming. So so I'll be watching very carefully, see how scam how this goes tonight. But I'm sure he'll be dropping some dust
I got a feeling I'm gonna get a
in
text
the room.
message from him later tonight.
But it's good to see you, brother, and always salute to the members of him, Trey Ferg, the Ball brothers of the BMU network are certainly in full effect tonight. So it's good to see the brothers come out and unite and support your brother on this platform. But yeah, I mean that's something that for those in the US, it's gotta affect simply just the power of because even America's greatest import is its influence.
Yeah,
And so even in Greece, like you said, I mean, things aren't what they were. You're seeing more of Kenya. Good to see you tonight. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate you stopping by. So yeah, so those are things that I see can certainly be detrimental, but at the same time, I think the fact that Greeks can still have that sense of unity and culture together, I think that's a good thing. And the fact that you build houses on top of each other, that I never heard of that one, but that's definitely something I could certainly see that would certainly unify people together. So I want to move to. So we talked about usually the average number of kids in a house might be 2 to 3. I actually looked up in the U.S. currently, and I know like I said, I know that the population has dipped down. It used to be, I think, in 1960, it was 2.33 children under 18 in a household in 1960. Right now, it's down to 1.94. So it's definitely dipping down. And like I said, the magic number seems to be 1.6. You need to have 1.6 in order to maintain the society. Now, keep in mind, 1960, that was actually at the end of the baby boomers. So the baby boomers drove that number up significantly because after 1945, they came back from World War II, and all those horny guys decided to get all these women pregnant. So they definitely they definitely contributed to a boom in the size of homes. But so you have this home. So just painting a picture of a typical Greek or
Mhm.
Greek American home. You got two or three children in it. It's multi generational. What's typical Greek life in terms of um, just like growing up in a typical Greek home? What are you going to see there? What are the some of the traditions or some of the things that a young child, let's say if you're say 6 or 7 years old, what are things you're going to see in a Greek house that you may or may not see in another home in Greece?
So the first thing you're gonna realize is most of the houses are spotless. And you come into a refreshing smell. It's always like that. That's what I remember always.
Uh, And where's that smell coming from?
Usually from sand, burning, flowers, natural stuff. We don't do the whole wall plug in. At least back then. I'm like,
No
I'm not
point.
gonna sit at bullshit. I'll
No,
be straight up. And
gotcha.
it depends on what season we're talking about. Let's say winter season,
Mhm.
and you have the oil stove in the back burning oil. You smell that nice warm thing coming in. The first room you always walk to is always the living room. That's the first room you always hit in any house who I ever lived in, walked into. Most households only have one TV, not two, not three, one, and you
So
share
you're not
time.
gonna have it right. So you're not gonna have a TV. The kids aren't gonna have a TV in the room.
Yeah, this is back when I lived in. Now it's probably a little. Some kids I know, some of my friends have TVs in their rooms now.
Right.
TVs got a little cheaper over the years.
Right.
Except if you buy an 85 inch like I did, like crazy I am, but that's a whole different story for a
Right.
different
Right.
conversation.
Right.
But the then it depends. The houses are small always in Greece. Remember that they're very small.
Okay. Okay.
So when
So
you
it's
first
not
walk in,
likely then for kids to have their own rooms oftentimes, or do you
no,
put like
like the one of the one of my neighbors. Actually, let me phrase that. One of my two of my neighbors, one of my best friends who lived down the street, he shared his room with his brother. The
mhm.
other one, three girls, one girl had her own room, and the other two had it together. It just happened to
Okay,
work like that.
so you can spread out if you can, but it's not uncommon for siblings to be in the same room.
Yeah, like my
Mm,
other buddy who lived a couple towns away from me, he shared a room with his sister.
right.
So it's more common to share a room. Like most houses from that size family, like you're looking at two bedrooms most likely. So somebody's sharing a room.
Right.
You like it or not. It just how it falls in. And like my one neighbor, she had the whole place. So there were two rooms downstairs and three upstairs. So everybody had their own room. So, but again, her
Right.
husband, who worked for the government, who was a design contractor, I mean, does the drawings for the buildings and stuff like that. He makes very good money.
Hmm.
So he's gonna have,
Hmm.
I remember always seeing two cars in his property. I remember phrase that outside his house, two cars. I had the nicest stuff always, like the AC, the everything. I'm like, damn, I wish I had that kind of money. But
Yeah.
again, depends on your line of work. But back to the house thing. Now, then you have the bedrooms, the bathroom, and I'll give you a little hint. So if you go to older houses, the floss in the toilet is not behind the toilet on top. You have to pull a string down.
Oh, they got the old ones from the
Yeah, I remember going to
that's from
Greece
like the
ago.
20. I remember like when I watched The Godfather, like the scene where Michael deletes the bad guy. So he goes into the bathroom. He says, "There's the toilet, and this guy has the thing to pull down." I never saw one of those, but certainly those references to those older ones. So even today, they still have that kind of
The
they're gonna
older
be
houses do.
the older houses.
Yes.
New
So
ones are more modern.
I remember when I first moved to Greece and I speak very little Greek. I go to my grandma, my yaya. I go, yaya, this was enough though means what the hell is that? She goes, "That's how you flush your toilet." Like, how do I reach that? And she goes, "You put your." I was smoke. I was young. You know what I'm saying?
Right, right.
So, and the other one was like, "You're gonna." This is gonna shock a lot of people. The older houses, you have to turn the switch on, wait till the warmer gets hot, and then shower.
Okay, so the water has to be heated up. It's not you didn't have boilers necessarily that can keep
Exactly.
water heated at the
Yeah. Now, after 2015, they changed the law. Now you're allowed to have boilers.
right,
That's a newer law. So you have the house has been newer to have that.
right, right.
Now some houses will have a backyard, not common with backyard. And I'm talking about backyard is very small. Like you can literally put maybe a table, a barbecue, and that's it. It's not
So
like
the
you.
houses are pretty compact. They're
Oh
pretty
God, yeah, yeah,
stacked on. Not
yeah,
only they stacking houses on top of each
yeah,
other, but it's going to be very congested, and so you're not going to have like
yes,
having a half acre property or something like that
yes,
is not something that's available to the average middle class person or
correct.
what have you. You'd
Now,
have to
if
have
you
some
want
money
a
into it.
bigger property and you can afford it, you're not going to be living in Athens or Peristeri or Patra. You're going outside, in the forest, kind of like
In the country,
Lucha, for example, where I have
right?
a property down there. That is out. Great. I can build there, but I'm away from everything.
Yeah,
Like, if you're going to do business, you're going to Athens. So you're not going to live there and you're going to be working in Athens. You're going to be driving 45 minutes to an hour. It depends where. Sometimes it's an hour and a half, too.
right, right.
So most common, you're going to be in the city or
So the met
outside the
so
city.
right, so the metros are pretty congested, and
Oh
so
God, yeah.
again, to try to get real estate, it's like trying to live in New York City and try to have something you're generally not going to have it.
Yeah.
But it's interesting you talk about the boils because you just brought to memory when I went to Jamaica last year, latter part of 22. A lot of the houses there also had, like you said, they had those boilers on top of this, on top of the homes because one thing when we were there, one thing I wanted to do when I got there, I said, and I hooked this up with the booking agent. I said, I want to be able to like see Jamaica. I don't just want to stay because we stayed in a very nice resort, very exquisite, adults only resort and everything. And that was fine, but I definitely wanted to spend some time outside of the resort, and I wanted to see how people lived and what a typical neighborhood was like. And very similar to what you're talking about, it's like all the homes were again relatively small. They had the boilers, like you said, they were on the roofs of the homes.
Mhm.
And they, again, you had to, like you said, they had to turn them on in order to heat up the water, and then you got your water from there. But the boiler itself was actually on the roof of the homes, and all of the homes were gated. It's like they had these strange gates, and the gates had these unique wire and spiral configurations to them, and no particular gate was the same because a lot of those gates were like they were formulated like it's not like you go to a Home Depot and just say, okay, I want to buy this gate or whatever, or buy this fencing. Everything was like uniquely done there. So every house had a very lit because every house had been literally built. Like when I was in Jamaica, you didn't see any developments like you see here in the US where just Hovanian goes in and just builds a bunch of homes or whatever. It was every home was literally built brick from the ground. And one time we went on a tour and we were going through, and there were a lot of the houses that didn't have roofs. And I was just thinking off the top of my head, it's like, yeah, well, no one's living there. And the guy actually said people actually live in those homes. In Jamaica, the average person makes $30 a day, and you build
Sheesh.
your house as you go along. So your roof might be tinfoil initially, put that tin up there first until you can afford to build a more stable roof on your building. But all the houses look, they've been built out of brick, and all of them have again these unique gates and fences that they use with these configurations. Some of the houses have roofs or not, but again, that's how people live over there. It's not, you know, you think you're in paradise, but most folks just don't live that way. So just some of the things you're talking here about the small homes made mostly of brick and very close to each other, and the boilers is reminding me of a lot of what I saw when I was in Jamaica. I mean, so it's again, for a lot of people in the U.S., you take
Mhm.
for granted what you have here, and so sometimes it's good when you travel outside the country because you can relate to what other people, how they really live. So, that's if one thing traveling does is it definitely humbles you to an extent to be more grateful for what you do have than always complaining about what you don't. But there's so much similar to what you're talking about. In just I mean I'm just picturing in my mind what a typical Greek neighborhood or a Greek home looks like. And
The only thing I want to
I've
mention, I don't
definitely
know
seen
how
it.
it was in where you went in Memphis. Like houses are like literally connected to each other.
Yeah, they weren't the houses weren't connected. I mean, you could walk between them, but it wasn't like, again, a hop's gonna jump. I would say there was probably no more than like 5 feet between the homes. So they weren't
No, you're not
connected,
even
but they
getting
were.
that. You're not even getting an inch between the houses, and it
Yeah. So
happens.
so it's like, but again, that makes more sense than why the homes are built of brick, because you don't want the next house next to you to burn down. Should that
God forbid that
should that
happens.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But let's get back. First of all, we had some comments in the chat earlier. Again, I think Corey he had a comment about, again, the generation divide. You're absolutely right about here, where between the generations. Yeah, there is a conversation going on where, again, the millennials and the Zers, they coming after the Gen Xers and the baby boomers, and I've been a part of some of those conversations. And we've been salute to Miss She Said. Thank you so much for stopping through tonight and visiting us. Appreciate you coming here. And so yeah, so he's definitely right about the conversations that are going on. And again, another comment here, Lady Novoa, my grandfather told me that one of the greatest gifts you can give a person is your time. Many people have a lot of wisdom to pass along, but no one's to give it to give them the time to listen to them. So yeah, you're absolutely right. This is something that I'm hopeful that in these spaces we can actually create a platform where we can share. Because I know certainly a lot of Gen Xers and boomers certainly want to share what we have, and we want to be in an environment to invite people to have the questions, not just in this environment, but then hopefully to build relationships that go offline. I've had so many guys who reached out to me offline because they just want to have a conversation about certain things, that I've done, or just to see my perspective on things. So yeah, so this is an area where we want to have these conversations to bridge it. But I think America itself is oftentimes an impediment, due to the capitalistic nature here, the competitive nature here, that is keeping people from not being able to come together. And especially when you have opportunities a lot of times to leave your now again. Grim, I haven't asked you about this, but when you have an opportunity to leave, like to move out of it seems like in Greece more people would be content to live in the area that they're in. Like you said, you have a house, you get married, your kids will build a house on top of the one that's already there, and so on and so forth. But it's like here, it's like as soon as someone changes their financial or economic situation, they just want to bounce. So it's like I want to move from the inner city and I want to move to the suburbs, or I want to move halfway across the country or whatever. So keeping those ties between people becomes a lot more difficult. Now, again, hopefully, again, with social media, with YouTube and whatnot, it can help to bring some of that together. But a lot of that has been lost here in the United States. But typically in Greece, from what you're saying, I don't know if people just decide, okay, yeah, I got a really good job, so I'm going to leave the community or leave the family and move halfway across. Like you said, you had your cousin who did that, and then she was crying for 3 months because she kind of missed the neighborhood, or she kind of missed the environment
Mhm.
that she was in. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely the generational issues here are certainly very real ones, and but I think it first starts with the acknowledgement of it. But the real question for me is, okay, are people willing to sit down, stop blaming one another for what's happened, but let's have the conversation, and let's create an environment where those conversations can take place in a constructive way that leads to solutions. So I'm always about that.
See, I feel like our country here, as Americans,
Mhm.
we love to blame somebody else for our problems, like generations. Like people always like blaming the baby boomers or generation millenniums, like Z's, X, T, Y, whatever the case. I don't give a shit what generation you are. I'm gonna respect you the same you respect me. If we start forgetting about putting a title and a picture of who the hell you are, what generation you are, forget that. Throw that shit out the window. Forget about it.
Mhm.
Talk to person like you're talking to anybody else. Like me and you have a big difference. We don't ever think, well, I'm a generation so. That's never coming in any of our conversations
No.
because
Well,
I
that's
don't
a,
give a shit
yeah.
about it. You don't either, really.
Yeah. Now now for me that's a mindset that
Mhm.
I sort of adopted. Like I can't tell you how much like Bruce Lee, um, reading his philosophies that had a major impact on me, and just the idea of everyone has something to offer. I just believe that. I think young people, I think Gen Zers, Gen Y, and I think we got there's a new one now. I forget. Those guys are like 14, 15 years old right now. I forget what they call them,
And don't
but
forget the new ones, the baby ones. Gen
it's
COVID,
after the Zers. What's that?
Gen COVID.
I don't think that's how they call it, but you got those guys, and but I'm just my prayer. I say this prayer a lot, like Lord, I want to grow in wisdom, but I don't want to get old. I want to grow in wisdom, but I do not want to get old. And so I'm going to always take an opportunity to learn from my kids, my daughters. Again, my youngest one is 20. And so, I look forward to, just as we're having this conversation tonight, I'm having the conversation with them. I want to know what's going on in their world. I want to know what they think. I want to know what, take advice from them in terms of, how can I connect with with younger people, because I think the world that they're growing up in said see I think back in the day people could take advantage of having wisdom or being older for the simple fact that the society didn't change a whole lot. I mean, think about it. Go back to the agrarian days where everybody's a
Yeah.
farmer or something like that. Society didn't change for probably like thousands of years. We went from nomads to agrarian, hunter gatherer culture, to agrarian, to industrial age and whatnot. And but with each generation, the time base got smaller. Now we've been in this information age, and things change so fast. Like my middle daughter, I remember going to a college orientation, and the professor said, "Well, what we're teaching you now will be irrelevant by the time you graduate." He just said that out the box. I'm
That's
like,
a
wow,
great example. Even like technology, if you think about it, by the time you
yeah,
get the iPhone 15, literally, I got mine just came out, and now the Samsung 24 Ultra is already past this in literally less
yeah.
than 2 months.
It's basically dead on arrival. You know what
Yeah,
I'm saying? The technology is dead on arrival. Um,
and I think that's how we need to start looking at different generations. I don't know if we could not cannot keep looking back or like it's like, hey, it was their fault, their fault.
right.
Why? I
Yeah,
might start
yeah,
learning from them. That's why I love talking to our pain so much sometimes because you learn so much from that guy.
yeah.
I know he hates
Absolutely.
you just said it like he is wise because of his age.
Yeah. Indeed, indeed, and he wants to share it, and so for a
Yeah.
lot of guys, he takes a lot of flack out there, but I was like, that's why I'm here. I want to bring the smoke. Let's have a conversation. But if you're coming with just well, it's your fault, then where do we get somewhere? It's not so much whose fault it is. How can we fix and how we can go forward? And again, just with technology, I mean, people are just living earlier. I mean, living longer. I mean, I'm competing at 54. I'm competing with guys who are 34. You know what I'm saying? In the job market still. I'm still very much active. When I go on a job interview or anything or technology that comes out, I got to embrace it just as much as a 20 something would. And so I can't have a mentality as like, oh well, I'm an old AS400 programmer or something like that, and I don't understand some of this new stuff. No, I got to stay relevant. So that's just something I just adopted, and so I don't come into these spaces trying to say, well, I know more than you, or I forgot more than what you what you learned or whatever. I forgot that. I don't come with that. I just want to, if I have something to contribute that you can benefit from, hey, I'm all for that. But and certainly I'll listen to you. I like listening to. I've been, March will be 27 years of marriage for me, but I love listening to newlyweds because I want to see what that um the that situation is like, because I got daughters. I have an interest. Like I'm praying my daughters get married in the next few years. So I want to know, how can I be a better mentor to them in that. So yes, I think ego and the constant need to always be right continues the connection. Absolutely. So
Yeah, that's
I
a good
gave
point
that up.
there.
Like I
Very,
said, I
very
gave
good
that
point.
up I gave that up a while ago. It's like it's not about me being right or the need to be right. I want to learn. I want to grow. I want to be wiser. And so me staying on to holding on to things. And again, I think in Greek culture, grooming, I think that may come a time when people are going to start to reckon that. I mean, it's still great that people are listening to each other, but again, as the Greek culture changes, I was just reading up some things. I know Greece has gone through a lot. You talked about them
Yep.
joining the EU back in 1981. They joined they adopted the euro in 2001, and then they went through that debt that they almost went bankrupt. I think 2007, 2008. Now again,
Yep.
everybody. I mean, America went through that, but Greece like really had a bad time. You know, in that period, 2007, 2008. They were in bad shape. So it's not going to surprise me that younger people are going to be asking the older people about what are you guys doing and why are we in these situations and why is it that a pack of cigarettes is $20 when back in the day it was $1.50 or whatever it was. So I think the people are going to start to ask at some point, but you still have that connection that wasn't broken in, and part of it is because I think people are still living together. I think it's difficult to constantly be arguing and blame with someone you live in right next to. But for so many people, I think there was a flight when I graduated college in the 90s. Everybody who was in the North moved to Atlanta. If you were Black American, everybody moved to Atlanta. That was just like the place, hot Atlanta, they used to call it back in the day. And so, people they just wanted to get out. They grew up in the hood, they grew up in the projects, or they grew up in the middle class or whatever. They just said, I just want to bounce and I just want to do my own. I just want to do my own thing. Yes, scam in Greece, according to Grooming Reviews, pack of cigarettes is like $20. And a lot of these changes happened because when they adopted the euro, everything just shot up in price. It just escalated. So yeah. So some of the decisions that have been made by the older at some point may be challenged by the younger and said, why have you left us in this particular situation? But that's I think America might be further along in that. We're still trying to work out how can we fix it. And I do think, just in general, I think leadership needs to be younger. Just period. I mean, here you look at how our political process is. I'm not going to get overly political here, but they're basically going to be wheeling you out in a box. That's how you get out of politics. It's like 99 is still in college or whatever. I mean, that's there's there should be age limits on a lot of these simply want to hold on to power and to influence here, but not to spend too much on that. I want to go again. I want to get into the house because again, the show is about growing up in Greece or what a Greek family culture is like. I think we're getting some ideas about what that's like. Yes, $20 for a pack of cigarettes. But I really want to get into let's deal with discipline. All right. Um, so again, in the house, uh I'm assuming, especially because what I'm hearing, you guys are still kind of old school like that. Is it still spare the rod, spoil the child in the house? Who does it? Who does the whippings or whatever? If do you have timeouts? Do you have so talk about how children are disciplined in a Greek home versus and compare again. Any chance you get, contrast it to a Greek American home versus a something that's in so still congratulations. Yes, they like I said, they roll them out. It's like they die in office. Um, so talk about that. In terms of how children are taught in the home and discipline and things of that nature. So speak to that for us.
So a couple of things we do not have in Greece is timeouts and grounding, or even suspensions or detentions, and even in school. They don't exist. At least from my experience.
Hang on. Say that again.
Okay,
So
so go ahead.
you said no. Just repeat what you just said.
So we do not have timeouts.
No timeouts.
No, you can't be. You know, something you getting grounded.
No groundings. Okay.
Even in school, it's no suspension or detention. Those are four that word I have never heard as a Greek person in Greece.
Mhm.
I heard him here in the States. My mom never put me in timeout or took my TV away. Like the worst she ever done was I got my ass whooped a lot.
Mm.
So depends what was around. Sometimes it was a belt, sometimes it was a sandal, sometimes it was a piece of stick, sometimes it was whatever she found. I had it wearing it in
Mhm.
me at one point.
Mhm.
So the discipline comes between both parents. It depends what you did and who's around. Sometimes they will just yell at you, and they don't care who's around. Your cousin might be around, a family friend around. You're going to get your ass chewed out like you were in private. No filter on that. You're
Mm.
still going to get slapped around if
Now, wait a
you're
minute. When you say slap, I mean, define. You're not talking with the hand slap, or you just saying figuratively, like they'll
oh, both. I've
seriously
been wound up.
in the face?
Oh yeah, cross the face several times.
Ah,
Yeah.
I can honestly say I've gotten beat with the belt, with extension cords, with hangers, with the shoes, the paddle, whatever. I've never been slapped in the face,
Oh, I have.
man.
The
And that's
worst
common.
one
I
for
mean,
me.
is that you know? Have you seen other kids get that?
Oh
Is
yeah.
that a common thing?
Oh yeah. Very common. Very common. Though
Wow.
you see, I give you one of the worst thing getting hit. You know which one it is? Your mother takes a handful of pepper. I mean, literally a handful, shoves it in your mouth, and you cannot
Oh,
rinse it out.
wait a minute. She
That
takes a handful of pepper and forces it into your mouth.
yeah. I laugh at it now. But when I was like 10, 11, 12 years old, oh, that was not
What did
fun.
you do to deserve that?
I talked back. And it wasn't that bad, I thought. Until this day, I argue where, like, that wasn't too bad. Like, you're right. She goes, it wasn't bad. But the point, you talk back, not what you said, because you talk back. That was disrespectful. So I think we were arguing. Oh, yeah, I remember we were arguing what to watch TV. And she wanted to watch a show. I want to watch something else. And I said, no, I'm watching what I want. And she goes, who the hell are you talking to like that? Next time I go, whoop, in the mouth. I'm like, and it was, she literally locked the fridge, turned off the water. I could not get the water anywhere. I'm
Oh my
like,
gosh.
and it was there was old school, like the lock ones. And I'm like, hey, I was screwed.
Wow.
Um,
I have never heard that kind. They used to talk about washing your mouth out with soap here in the States. And I don't know if anybody's ever done that.
oh, I know a few kids who
But
had
I,
that
I, I
older ones.
I've heard it, but I've never seen it done. But still, pepper, black pepper in your mouth, and you got to keep that in your mouth. You can get water or anything. You just got to deal with it. Your
Yeah.
eyes must have been like bloodshot red and crying and
Oh god,
everything.
yeah. I'm like, I remember I talked to friends about who participant does. Like, yeah, I ate soap when I was a kid. I'm like, that's it. Try pepper, black pepper. And they're saying, I can't be that bad. No
Oh
water.
my
Oh,
gosh.
never mind. And that's
My
when
God.
you were a kid, you hate pepper. You're like, pepper was like the worst thing in the world because
Mhm.
you don't like spice as food. Yeah. Now the discipline, it goes between both parents. Could be
Okay.
the grandparents too. It could be even your godfather.
Mhm.
I've been disciplined for my teachers, like I told you before. I was
But
even
in schools,
disciplined.
right? In schools, they
Yeah.
still use corporate punishment
Yes.
in schools.
Even in church, because I was altar boy, the older boys, they're allowed to give us a nice whipping once in a while if we're out of line. I remember we had a lot of stray dogs in my neighborhood.
Mhm.
And one day we see when I say army of dogs, I'm not kidding you. It was an army of dogs. This pack was huge.
Right. Right.
And it was like, something like, and I was like, oh, I was talking. And it was my best friend's brother. Next thing I know, I get pulled in the corner and go, pap, 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 pap. For like 10 minutes. My cheeks were so red. I'm like, I was getting old. I was like, man, one of these days I'm gonna knock him out. Never did.
Mhm.
But now I kind of talk to him about it. Like, dude, you just kind of fucked up about that. Like, yeah, I know. But what you do that? Like, I'm older. I can do what I want and get away with it. What do you think you're gonna do? Nothing.
Yeah.
Literally, you can't do nothing. And I hear this whole conversation. I have people like, if I was them, I would have knocked him out. No, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't.
Right.
Because now
So,
you're
so I'm
outnumbered
assuming
5-1.
So I'm assuming in Greece there's no I'm gonna call it DIFUS. Or is there child protective services in Greece? I mean, are there cases where stuff gets extreme? Are there state
Yeah,
or
extreme. Okay,
something?
are we talking about extreme, like putting your kids in a hospital? Yeah, there are cases.
Well,
There's a department for that.
putting a mouthful of pepper in a kid's mouth and forcing that kid in, that's pretty extreme. I mean, I don't think that would fly here too well
Yeah,
in the states, because I
yeah.
think Lady
At the
Novell said
time,
if you got sick from that or had to go to the hospital from that, then that would have been a situation.
see,
So
once you hit the pepper, your parents know you're gonna spit it out. We all knew that. And just not be able to rinse it out. That was the worst part of
yeah,
that.
oh, so not the rents, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So, calling the cops on you, your parents, and like the cops will probably take the belt off, hand it to your
Just
parents, like, you can
we'll
use my
call it
belt.
that.
And as
Man.
we all see those movies and TV shows that they do that. Like a cop pulls his belt off. Next time I'll have your mom whip you with my belt. That's common in Greece.
Did you get regular hits, whippings, or just crucial punishments besides pepper? Well, I think he already said. I mean, he got slapped in the face.
I got
I
slapped in the
mean,
face. I hit the hands.
man.
Hit in the ass. Believe it or not. Wasn't he had to cover that up once in a while. But it was never excessive to the point like, okay, you're doing this at a spike now. Now you're being a little, you know, power controlling person.
Mhm.
No, it was always I did something wrong. Like my
Mm.
mom said, like I remember my grandma locked me out of the house one time. She goes, "You're not going to your friends." I'm like, I'm doing what? Went to her friends, play, come home, doors were locked. She says, "You're not coming in till I said so." She let me sit there for 2 hours outside waiting. I was shaking the doors. And my grandma had those bars, like you just said in Jamaica. But we were the only ones because my grandma traveled back and forth from Greece to America. So she wanted to make sure her house was protected. So
Mhm.
she made like Fort Knox, prison
Right.
style.
Right.
So those were solid. I mean, welded. She got the best welder, the best iron guy. Anyway, so I'm shaking the bars. I'm like thinking one is gonna break down. Nope, nothing was happening.
Mhm.
And people was like you're not gonna let him. Like, nope, he's gonna learn his lesson. And I just keep walking by. Nobody said anything.
Wow.
We called the cops. Nothing. Eventually, my grandma let me in. She goes, "I hope you learn your lesson now."
Wow. Now, assuming, like, let's say if a whipping happens or something
Mhm.
like that, is there like a follow up at some point? Like, you're gonna go to your room, you're gonna cry and whatnot. Did the parents come in later? Do they explain to you why they did it or whatever? Or if let's say if they discipline you for the wrong reason, maybe they uh misjudge something or whatever, will they say, will they apologize, to you if they overreacted or something like that? Is that something that is kind of, because I know you said talk about how stubborn people can be in Greece. But is that something, said for a parent to apologize to you for doing something, or to sit you down and explain, why they did something to you? Or it was just like, you got to hit it. It was expected. Move on to the next thing, and you may get popped again at another point, or whatever. But you just accept it. I mean, what's
So most times it was like one of those things like you kind of got hit and you get moved on. You didn't really say too much about it because it was like, okay, they always say before you get hit, you're gonna say, "Why did you do this? Why did this happen?" They asked you always
hmm
questions, and eventually you got hit.
hmm
I remember one time my father was in Greece visiting me, and we were going over my homework. He didn't like how I was giving the answers out to him,
hmm
and the first thing he did, he didn't give me a chance to explain. Got smacked with a goddamn textbook. I'm like, God damn, you're not even here an hour already. I'm getting hit. I'm thinking to myself. And my grandma goes like, that's how he's supposed to say it. I'm like, really? That's the only time he ever apologized to me. Going, I'm sorry. He goes, the only time he ever hit me. He says, I'm sorry.
hmm
In 38 years, that's the only time.
So all those other still apologize. And again, I mean, if he feels justified, he feels justified. But I'm just saying, just in terms of is there any follow up? Is there any, you know, sit down and
No,
explain like the reason
no.
why I did that? So it's just, now one thing I heard. I was watching a video on Greek people. One thing I heard is that in the Greek people or Greek families, you fight
Mhm.
and you forget.
Kind of, yeah. That's true.
It's like you can just burst out like fight, and then it's like 5 minutes later,
Yeah, it's true.
it's like as if nothing happened.
It's true. I'll give you a good example. Me and my mom, we get into some nasty fights. Even when I was younger to now, we just butt heads. But
Hmm.
we don't butt heads like I go down there and fight with her, and we like once a day. No, this happens once every 6 months or so.
Hmm.
At this point in my life, is what I say goes because I pay the bills, I take her to the doctors. End of story.
Hmm.
But the issues I have for disclosure is she doesn't want to take her medication.
Yeah, that's it. That's
So
same with my mom. Yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
so I will put my thing down pretty much. My voice will be raised, and you're taking the medication, or we're gonna have a discussion you're not gonna like. But back to original.
Did it happen
Use
again?
my one of my exes, for example. We used to get in fights. I'm like, stream matches really bad. 5 minutes like, hey, we went for dinner. I don't know. What are you thinking? You want pizza? Yeah, sure. Then she's looking at him like, you guys are fucked up. You both need fucking therapy. She used to say to me, this is unhealthy. I'm like, nah, I think it's healthy. Talk to a
This is
therapist,
yeah.
dude.
Right, this is how Greeks do. It's like I was like you have a couple like a husband and wife, like they'll fight over
Yeah,
something, whatever, some stupid, whatever, and it's like 5 minutes later, as if it's not, as if it didn't happen. It's
it's
just
happening. Facts.
wow,
Yeah, that's
wow,
how why I'm with my friends like that too. Like guys, we have never argued, but let's say we did argue. Like 5 minutes later, yo, you want to get a beer? By the way, you want to look at me like,
yeah,
I don't really want to rip your goddamn head off, and you want a fucking beer? Like, yeah, why not?
wow,
Never mind. That's how
wow. That's
I
crazy.
don't. That's why I don't think. That's one thing about me professionally outside these two streets. I might workplace. I might argue with people like I don't keep anything a grudge. Like, whatever. Shit happens.
Yeah. As Lady Novoa has a question here, Mr. B. What would you do if your kid stood up to you like they was grown? Do you think whippings is meant even with the Child Protective Services or what they call in some states DTS or something? Um, let me make sure I get. Make sure I posit your question right here. It says, would you do if your kid stood up to you like it that was grown? Do you think whoopings is meant even with CPS or honestly, look in my house. One thing I did decide to do as a parent, I've never spanked my daughters. I don't think I can't remember if I even whacked them on the butt or whatever. I just, I got so much of that growing up. And keep in mind, my mom again, she was a paranoid schizophrenic, so a lot of things I got beatings that I got, literally, I didn't do anything, but she imagined that I did something, and that was enough for me to get beat with. So I made certainly a decision early on that I wasn't going to employ corporal punishment. I just don't believe in it. And I know a lot of black people, black and brown people, are fancy it. Some people even romanticize it. I think it's been overly romanticized. I don't think it's necessarily made us better. People talk about, oh yeah, my parents whooped my butt and I'm here. But look, our prisons are full of people, of men and women who've been beat. So if you got bad intentions, you got bad intentions. And I think, I do think we need to be smarter about how we go about exacting discipline by setting standards early and enforcing them and not going back on them. But I think a lot of those folks did beings out of frustration over they didn't necessarily know how to answer something, or the fact that you even asked a question, they felt it was questioning. And there's a difference between asking questions and questioning. And but for a lot of them, they almost felt like, oh, you think you're smart, you're trying to be smart. It's like, no, I'm asking a question. And then they thought they looked at that as a um as a disrespect. And that's the thing for a lot of people. It's like the slightest hint of something being disrespectful is something that they won't tolerate. It says with CPS going on, would you whip your kid if they stood up to you like an adult? Um, I've never had that situation. So again, that would be a very difficult thing to answer. I think I certainly would. And again, I think about the age. You talk about a 12-year-old, yes. A 16-year-old, maybe not. And an 18-year-old, you got the door. So you can leave. It's like, but legally, by you time to 18, you don't have to live here. So so I was fortunate enough to I was definitely fortunate enough to not to, have to resort to that sort of thing. But I think just maintaining a proper family structure and whatnot really helped us that we didn't necessarily have to do that. Now, my wife, she might have spanked him on the butt once or twice or whatever, but generally, we try to maintain a consistent structure here, and we just were determined never to necessarily have to go to that. What would happen if that did happen? I can't say because I've never done it. So I just want to be transparent about that. But that's just not something that I endorse. And I think especially I always wanted my kids to be able to think for themselves and to be independent and not necessarily operate in fear, but operating understanding. And so that was just something I just didn't want. But I would certainly admit that my upbringing was certainly something where I wanted something different than what I got. And I think when man was talking earlier, Blaze, he was talking about, yeah, I got, the tire, the racetracks and all, yeah, everything was on the table when it came to the pots, the pans, you named it. And like I said, there was a lot of cases where I didn't do anything wrong, but because my mom was in her paranoid state or whatever, and she thought I did something wrong, I would get something. That certainly had an effect on how I decided to parent. But certainly, I'm very fortunate that my kids turned out such where again we never had to go to that. Um, we never had to go to that extreme and whatnot. So I'm grateful that I've avoided that situation. But now for others who are, you know, growing up in those type of situations, I mean, if you're growing up in poverty, if you're growing up with single parent, if you're growing up with just a lot of things um, that are just difficult. Um, it's hard to kind of go in and diagnose at that particular time because you just don't know, where stuff started. I mean, this whole thing started you basically created a stressful situation by having kids without a proper home environment or a stable environment. So now people are um, trying to figure out what's the best way to deal with that. And a lot of times they deal with it because of the stress that they're having from the choices that they made. A lot of times that's taken out on the kids. And so it's a cycle that we need to be able to break. Now, what I'm seeing from what I'm hearing about what happens in Greek culture, and you can step in any time, grooming, is, and I think this is certainly something that even when I was going through it back in the day, I think one thing that I think helped a lot of us, yeah, probably the best word is helped, is that everybody was going through it. You know what I'm saying? So there was a perceived normalcy to it because everybody got it. Like nobody was getting more jacked up than anybody else was. Maybe me, probably because again, my mom, she would have an episode. But when I did do something bad, yeah, the punishment seemed to be appropriate for the times because I saw everybody else getting their butt beat. And so
Mhm.
grooming, you can relate. So if you can see in Greece, if it's common for kids to get slapped or beat with whatever, it's not like you don't feel isolated per se because that's just normal. And just even when it comes to the arguing, the fact that Greeks can have an argument, a husband and wife can have an argument, and 5 minutes later, it's like, what do you want for dinner? I mean, that's just part of the culture. So nobody's gonna feel, that's dysfunctional. When you're in it, that's how people operate. So again, it's healthy, and that's one of the reasons for the show is to explore how different cultures operate. Where we're similar, I mean, we're definitely sharing similar. I mean, discipline. We definitely shared how we're similar, but also then how we're different, and how is it that they're still able to maintain what we may think in the U.S. Oh, they know it's crazy that you can still slap a kid in the face, stuff like that, but to them, that's a normal part of their existence. And that's why I'm always, kind of tying it back to Greek Americans
Mhm.
because obviously living here, you're going to come to an understanding, whether you're old school or not, that some of that stuff may not be tolerated to the same extent that it would be in Greece. There's no corporal punishment usually and certainly not in public schools and not anymore. They were back when I was in grammar school, but certainly not in today's world. So everybody is having to adjust old thinking, old ways of doing things with how the world is changing. But certainly we can relate to one another in that, yeah, we got everything kind of thrown at us, but it seems like in Greece it's still somewhat normalized in terms of that treatment of kids. growing up in that kind of environment. Now, grooming. Now, do girls kind of get it too, or is
Yes,
it kind of like?
100%. Yes, yes.
Gr-
Do they get it as bad? I personally say no. They don't get nowhere near as bad as the guys do.
mhm,
But
mhm,
one thing I want to touch base on, like, this I think we're going to disagree. I'm not a fan of the overbeating, like a little slap here and there. I think sometimes you deserve it,
mhm,
but I think that because you're so scared as a parent, if you do this wrong thing, even taking their cell phones away, sometimes they next minute you know you got child protection service on your door knocking. Like, we need to stop letting the kids own us and let us be the parents. If they did something wrong, take the goddamn Xbox away, take their
mhm,
TV away, take their phone away. Tell them, no, you're
mhm.
not going to school. Take the car away.
Right.
If they have you want to slap too? I'm like, don't be scared to have a little enforcement. I think that's why we're in the condition we're in as United States of Americans, is because we let the kids control us now.
Yeah.
Why? I'll leave it there.
Well, it's. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's there's definitely a change in the dynamic. I think the pendulum swung too much to the others. To the other side.
Absolutely.
So again, how do we get? But Greece's pendulum is still to the far side, right?
Hmm.
Like I said, nobody. Like I said, no one is challenging that, or there hasn't been like a movement. There hasn't been the advocacy. I think America, just in general, is has especially considered the age of America. I mean, Greece has been around for what, 2,000 years, 5,000. I
Plus,
don't know.
yeah. Yep.
So America's like 200 and some years old. So the fact that we've gone through so much change in a relatively, compared to other empires, we're babies. The Roman, we carry the Greeks, the Romans, the Assyrians, the Macedonians, the whatever. We're just on the map. But think of how much we've gone through in the in the 200 years that we've gone through here. We've gone through so much. But Greek culture and other cultures, there seems, because they still maintain that normalcy about it. Those are conversations that they're not likely to have, certainly not in the near future, unless there's a movement, going to be some parental movement, or some young people get together and advocate against corporal punishment. But again, is the larger society or culture going to even listen? The governing authorities or whatnot, are they going to set up a new bureau to investigate these things? It's not likely to happen. But I think a lot of Greek kids can get through it because everybody's going through it, and nobody has to say, like, that you feel any less. It's like life is always defined in terms of your expectations, and if you expect something and get it, you just that's what I expect. But when you see how other people do things and say, "Oh, but you guys don't do that," and then you might start thinking, "Well, look, maybe I shouldn't have to think like that." So I think America, that's part of the, if there is such a thing as a melting pot of America, is that you get all these different people from all over the world who have different ways of doing things, and we start to question what we're doing. But I think overall, though, I do think, Green, certainly with scam and how other people have been saying, you know, I think we need to come to a middle ground here. I don't think, you need
I
to
agree
just
on that
always
too.
just go to the physical to just beat your kid, or certainly that slap. To me, the slapping to me is the most agree. I would rather get beat on my butt until my butt is red than get slapped one time by the parent. That's almost like spitting on somebody for me. And again, I recognize it's different for everybody, but that would be like spitting on a kid for me. Spare the rod, or spoil the child. I don't accept um, that those options. And because a lot of that comes from a biblical verse or whatever. But there's other scriptures that talk about your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Usually back then, the rod was used to shepherd sheep, and a lot of times it would be used to guide and keep them on the road. It wasn't like you were just whacking the sheep over with the rod every time. So again, that's whole spare the rod. I mean, sparing discipline. Discipline doesn't, I think, doesn't always need to be aggressive or physical or violent. And so I think, so for me, and what certainly what my wife and I did, again, we decided that we want to adopt something different. Yes, children need discipline, 100%. Kids need structure. Kids need consistency. Kids need some normalcy. So those are things that I think we have to that we have to always instill. If it has to get to the physical, it should be rare. And that's just me. But I get it. But
Mhm.
so again, even me, I even argue with the OGs. I mean, you talk about the millennials and the Zers arguing with the OGs. I have arguments with the OGs over how certain things are done. But I think it's something that we have to visit because I think oftentimes it's too romanticized and our churches and whatnot. Yeah, back in the day, we used to beat our kids with sticks and rods and stuff. And yeah, and people say, Amen, that's right, hallelujah, that's right, that's right. I'm not clapping. So, we can have that conversation. Can you bring up that last comment because I definitely want to address it. Say now I've never understood how some parents are afraid to punish their children or might even be outright afraid of their own children. Has this ever been an issue in Greece? I think you answered it, but if you want to just
Yeah, I'll touch base on it
repeat it.
again.
Thank
No,
you.
there's never been since I grew up in Greece. Now it's a little different too, obviously. But when I lived in Greece, no. If you, I'm not saying you're walking down the street every 2 seconds, somebody's getting beat up either. But if you need to discipline your kid, you're not be scared of who's watching. You're not gonna be scared who's going to tell who. If he did something wrong, you handle business. Simple. But I never seen in my experience, never experienced to get to, you know, out of control to the next level. Now, could have been some guys that are drunks or stupid idiots that take it too far, yeah. But child protective services or cops, I have never experienced that personally.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I said that they're just operating. No, the scripture might not be wrong, but I'm just saying that the scripture might need to be expanded because again, in that 51st that psalm, it says, "Thy rod and their staff they comfort me." So it's not always about getting beat. The rod was used. It had usually those rods. They had a hook on the end. And what you would do oftentimes is you would hook the rod around the sheep to bring that out of trouble. So I'm just saying a rod is not always the first action. Is just to whack with it. And I think just people need to be a little bit different. Um, but again, we can talk. We can certainly debate the idea of corporal punishment. But again, this is something that even in the black community we still wrestle with now. And like I said, I always go back to the fact that I don't think that we got all these people in prison because they didn't get beat. I think a lot of these kids did get beat, but they didn't have the structure, they didn't have the love, they didn't have the nurturing, they didn't have the environment, they didn't have the mentorship, they didn't have the safety to be kids. And so but that's a debate that guys like me and Trey Ferg were about the same age, so we'll cut the carpet on that probably in another upcoming show on the BMU network at some point in time. But I just think a different way when it comes to those sort of things. So all right. So we're talking about kids. Now, is there an age where the whippings or the slappings may stop at some point, like when you're 16 or 17 or 18?
Eventually,
Like,
a transition happens that as you get older,
mhm.
you mature. Okay, I don't do this. I don't get hit. So it's kind of
Okay,
like a
so it's
macho.
right. So, but there's not a because one other question I want to as a side to that, is there a sense of, like, I know in Jewish religion or Jewish culture, there's the thing, the bar mitzvah is the idea is that essentially you become a man at 13 years of age. There's a sense when you're treated as a man in the society. Is there something like that that's in Greece, where again you look at a kid differently? And when is a kid considered an adult? Is it 18? Is it 16? When can you, for example, sign up for the military, or where your parents are responsible for you? And then again, how are you treated when you're in those later teen years?
So that is kind of like a complicated answer because when you're decided as a man, that's the biggest question because you could be decided as a man when you first got a job
Hmm.
or when you first have a first real serious girlfriend or when you get drafted because don't forget draft is still in effect in Greece
When
to
is
this
it? What's
day.
the age you could be drafted? What age?
Technically it's 18,
Hmm.
but if you finish, say you're a smart kid and you skip a couple grades and you graduate a year earlier, and you don't want to go to college, you're drafted already. Like I use one of my best friends, Yorgos George in Greece.
Hmm.
He didn't get drafted until after he's done college. They want to make sure your school is done first. They don't want
Right.
your military career or experience or draft, whatever you want to call it, affect your school. School comes first, they say too. Even the government says that today.
Mm.
So that's why they try to give you as much free time, free education as possible.
Hmm.
But that's a different conversation for that,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah.
But with transition, the military, stuff, it's really up. It's up to the parent and the child. It all happens naturally. Like I remember at one point, like I was getting hit, then it got less and less and less and less. Like my parents like that. Well, you're a man now. We don't hit men anymore. No,
Okay. So around what age was that when you
my
started first hearing
teenage.
that?
I would say between when I hit 12 and up. I was kind of like because I kept myself busy. I wasn't doing stupid shit anymore. Like how kids are doing stupid shit because they're bored most times.
Hmm. Hmm.
I was so busy when I was a kid, even now. That's a funny part.
Well, now,
But
now, now, I don't want to give you an excuse, but I would do want to give you and you did mention in our first show that you were diagnosed with something that you actually experienced twice because of going from the U.S. to Greece and then from
my
Greece
brain
back.
spelling disability.
Yeah, yeah. So, do you think that some of that may have contributed to your behavior, or your rebellion, or what
My
have you? Or that?
rebellion really came because I didn't have a father next to me. I had a provider. Don't get me wrong. I know who my father is. They might be separated now, but my father came home every night. He put food on the table. He took me to the movies. He did what a father thought what he did. Keyword thought, because my father's father died very young,
Mhm,
so he never had that effect.
mhm,
That role model. So the closest thing I had a role model who took me by the hand and goes, let me teach you how to throw a punch. Or why did you do that?
mhm.
Oh, so it was my instructor, Master Ray.
Yeah, yeah.
He didn't
Martial
have
arts.
to do that. He didn't have to go the
Right,
extra mile.
right.
But he does for all his students. I used to call him the paved version of Mr. Miyagi because that's pretty much what it was. Parents paid him. He went above and beyond as a sensei, as a master to teach us the right way.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
my
So manhood generally, like you said, it can vary, but there's nothing
yeah,
formal. There's nothing official
yeah, no.
about that. Like same on the women's side. Like the idea of the Sweet 16, or in Latin countries the quinceañera,
Yep.
that was like a coming of age type of thing. Now, again, a lot of that was sort of like in high society, like in upper classes, they did a lot of that stuff. And so they got a lively discussion going on in the chat. I think we kicked something off in the chat as far as the corporal punishment stuff is still going on. But again,
Do
thanks to the chat for keeping the conversation
do we need to put a vote in the
going.
chat? Like, do we need to have a full episode just about corporal punishment? One
I
for
don't,
yes, two for no.
that conversation, well, we've had it certainly in the BMU space before. I certainly doubt that we will not have that conversation in the future. I've been at least on two panels where they've talked about corporal punishment. So this is again an
I was
ongoing.
joking when I said that. Actually,
Yeah, the whoopings and punish
we're
stops,
not having
but
that
not the
conversation.
punishments. When I
That's
started sixth grade, it was push-ups, legs. They were getting you ready. Now, so that's look. I like that though. I like that. Oh, you're acting up. Give me 20. Actually, that's not a bad idea. That's a good one. But but yeah. But I think that'll certainly come up in future combos. But like I'm saying, but with the ladies, the quinceanera, which was 15, and then the sweet 16s, that was basically you're coming out as a woman. Like we talked about marriage, or like when people get married. So I was, first of all, I was shocked when you said people getting married like at 38. I mean, that totally blew me away. I thought at 18 was more likely than 38. But that being said, when you came out when you were 15 or 16, you were basically declaring yourself eligible for marriage and courtship at that point. That's what it was for.
Mhm.
So you would go to these really high end expensive parties, and then you would have these gentlemen. They would come in with their sons and their suitors. They called them suitors back then. And you basically, your announcement was, yeah, we're taking applications at this point. So you come with your offer. or whatever you want to court or whatever, or what family you belong to. So again, it was a very kind of upper class sort of thing. But then people like the idea of having, Sweet 16. So then now it's like everybody has it. So it doesn't matter. You could be from the hood or whatever. You're still gonna have you're still gonna have a Sweet 16 party. But that sense of maturation or developing young people towards maturation, I think probably Jewish people probably do it to an extent that I haven't seen in a lot of Christian cultures or Western cultures to that extent, where they're training you formally for adulthood and responsibility. I think Greece still has a modicum of that in terms of, again, you grow up in these tight knit communities, but there's nothing formal about when a person is a man. I mean, 18, yeah, that's sort of obvious you're a man. But in
Hmm.
some cases, you could certainly be looked at as a man much earlier than that, depending on circumstance.
Yeah, it's a lot of factors. Like I can't sit there and tell you X, Y, Z is because X, Y, Z is now a factor. Even with the Jewish culture, they do this in the Sweet 16s and stuff like that. Even that, it might be passing the torch, but are
Hey,
you
leave that
actually
up.
mature enough?
Finish your point, but leave this up because I wanted to address it. But finish your point. We can take this one on.
Yeah, is going through the passing of the torch. Mature level may not be right there yet. I'm not saying you need to beat your child to the 20, but sometimes you might have to hold their hands a little longer and kind of explain to them, this how you balance a checkbook. This is why you get car insurance, and so on.
Hmm. Yeah, but I don't know. But I think someone made the point earlier. If your kid's like 13, 14, and if you still have to go to that, something might not be right. I mean, you would think that
Absolutely.
you should, the juvenile stuff should be out of them at that point. But if you still got that going on, then you may have deeper problems, which may need deeper solution. That's one of the issues that I have with the older generations is that, again, no one thought outside the box. If you beat them more, and you beat them until they get it right. You know what I mean? But there was like, look, the 13, something else. Look, can we have a conversation? But no one's looking to have that. So, but I want to address this, and I got a couple more questions for you as we start to wrap up. I think we got another 10
Yeah.
minutes here. Said parents shouldn't be friends with the kids. That's all bad. Yeah, and yeah, a friend and a parent and a um, child way, not how you friends with your friends. That's not good. What do you think, Mr. B? Um, I think you got to define friendship. What are we talking about here? And I said this on I think on a former barbershop or Tuesday night show. I think there's friends and there's buddies. Ultimately, friends have your back. They have your best interests at heart. So even as a parent, in many ways, you're just going to be a friend to your kid, but that doesn't mean that you got to dress like them and have the same interests and listen to the same music and stuff. It wasn't until my dad died that I realized he was one of the best friends I ever had, and we never had anything in common. We were like night and day. All right, he was very old school ways from the deep south, rural farmer, you name it. We had very little conversation, but I realized in terms of it wasn't until really it started early. It started when I started to have to be his primary guardian, start taking care of him. Is when I really started to understand that he was probably one of the best friends I ever had. So I think ultimately, I think we have to look at friendship a little bit differently. But I think a lot of times when we talk about friends, we talk about buddies. Oh, we got to have the same likes. We got to look the same. We got to go to the concerts together and whatnot, and talk to each other in certain ways and call each other by their first names. It's like, oh, don't call me mom and dad. Call me by my real name. And no, I'm not saying that is necessary to have a healthy functional relationship with your children. Now again, when they get older, like I'm certainly much more on friendlier terms with my daughters now. Like I said, I think my role as a parent has changed dramatically in the last couple of years. I look at myself less as a parent now and more as a mentor, a coach. So I'm like, look, you got to go out there and make decisions, but what can you might want to consider this before you go out there and make a decision. So in that aspect, I'm friends. When they can come and talk to me about anything, and I'm not there just telling them necessarily what to do, but I'm really trying to frame for them how to think about a situation or give them a perspective in terms of how to think about a situation. So I think, yes, we're friendly today, getting under influence because I have adults and I'm trying to help them to grow into full maturity as adults. So I don't come with the same parent energy then when I just had authority. It's like, do as I say because I'm your daddy or whatever. Like that, we're not operating, my wife and I, we're not operating under those conditions anymore. So definitely you have to, um, I think, certainly a relationship needs to evolve. But unfortunately, I have seen like, in grooming, you might even see this now, even in Greek culture. Your dad is 70 and you're 50 years old. And if they feel disrespected, they'll still slap you with a backhand.
Oh
You know what I
God, yeah,
mean? So that to me, that's not healthy. If you just think that if you if you just think that that's a healthy thing that I'm always your parent or whatever. It's like no, in fact I think that there should come a point in time where the children need to take over. You know what I'm saying? Like grooming, you're doing it now because your mom's kind of sick. I'm doing it because my mom's in the same situation. I take care of her also, not intimately like you do, but I, make sure all her affairs are taken care of. So I think you should be raising kids to be successors to you, but that
I
but
agree.
to have a relationship where you think, well, I'm always your daddy. I think differently in that. I think if anything, they're going to be taking care of me one day, and I might have to listen to them and say, okay, you do what's right. Okay, so that's the dynamic that I want to have, or what I've been having in our situation. But again, these are the conversations that are happening in the space, and everyone's kind of having these discussions. But a couple wrap up questions,
Before
grooming.
you
I
get
want
into
to
that,
ask you.
I will touch one
Go
base
go
on
for
that.
it. Go for it.
So I believe you could be your friend with your child and your parent, but you have to know when to draw that line.
Hmm.
So if they say, it says it look like you, hey, shut up. I'm like, excuse me, you don't talk to me like that.
Hmm.
That's like already then. But you can talk about video games and laugh and joke around. You have to know where to draw a line, and I'll
Hmm.
leave it there.
Yeah, but look, and I've had that conversation because it had to get to a point where it had to be. This isn't about father and son or a mother and son. This is about right and wrong, and this is about the situation. And yeah, you don't want to hear this, but this is where this thing is going, and you're going to comply. You know what I'm saying? So again, I think there has to be a point where you have to stand up. I've seen how many times you heard about marriages breaking up because the son is essentially so attached to his mom that still the mom is still dictating what's going on. That's not healthy. Or putting the mom first. That ain't healthy. You have to stand up and say, there might come a point in time, and again, a lot of OGs don't like to hear this, but you may have to put your parents in their place at some point in time. And that's a hard conversation. One of the hardest things I had to do when I had to take the car away from my mom because she was incapable of driving anymore. Or she was a hazard out there. I had to start the process to take her car away and be like, sorry, you can't do this anymore. And I got everything. You're not my son anymore. You're the end. All that. I had to swallow all that. But
I had to do
it
the
gets
same
to a
thing.
point
I
where
know.
there's right and wrong. And as a younger person, as a child of that, you're going to have to assume that responsibility at some point in time. And it may not happen, like I said, in all cultures. I know that old school, even in black culture, that's that old thing. 70-year-old men are still afraid of their 90-year-old dad. And I just don't think that's a healthy place. But that might be a later conversation that we talk about. But I
Yeah, of course.
definitely, I think there needs to be a line of succession
I
where
agree.
I should be able to say, you know what, here's son or daughter, here are the keys to the business. You got it. I'm gonna go down to Florida on my bass boat and I'm just gonna chill and fish or whatever. If you need me, if you need to talk to me, come talk to me. But I ain't running this thing anymore. That to me is a healthy way of doing things. But there's so many old people, they're still afraid to talk to their parents what needs to be said. And I think that's certainly something that I think needs to change. But one just because I know I'm going to forget it if I don't. You talked about now, from what I understand in Greece, Greeks smoke a lot, right? Is that all right? So when do as a young person, is it accepted that young people smoke? Like, will your parents? Because I know some cultures, introduce like drinking to their kids like early, like wine. It's very common in certain cultures where you give like an 8, 9 year old a glass of wine because you want them to be introduced to it. But what about something like cigarettes? Is that something that okay at age 12, if your dad's already taken you to the brothel, will he also give you buy you your first bag of cigarettes and say, "Hey, son, you're
Okay, that
how
works
does
a little
that work?"
different, but I'm gonna touch
Go for it.
both bases, drinking and smoking together. So drinking is introduced in a very, very, very young age because in
How
Greece,
young we
the
talking about?
whole I'm sorry,
How young we talking about?
baby, because the Holy Communion,
Babies.
yes,
Oh,
the
nah,
Holy
I'm not
Communion.
talking about that. I'm talking social drinking. I
I'm
mean,
getting to, hang on, let me get to it.
okay.
Man, you're in a hurry tonight. Whew. So like somebody turn off the decaf. What's decaf? Okay, Paul.
Mhm,
But it starts as very young as Holy Communion would be. Eventually, when you get a little older, it's very common. Like you're around the dinner table, have a small glass of wine, like a shot glass of wine or
mhm,
beer, and so on. Now, smoking, that's an interesting one because you might grab one from a friend and try. You're curious, or steal one from your mom. It's a bunch of different stuff. It's as much I want to say it should not be socially accepted. It is. I can't remember when like people were smoking. Like I remember when I visited my best friend for the first time in years, and I was smoking. So my mom goes to me, "Don't let your godfather see you because he will have his shit for you."
mm, mm.
So I'm like, whatever. I'm a smoker. I don't give a shit.
Well,
And
how old were you then?
21, 22.
Okay, you're an adult. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm thinking
I
more
was
like
an adult,
20.
but he hated smoking more than anything.
Okay, okay. Mhm,
So when my best friend came over, he gave me two big kisses and a hug. That's how Greeks, greet
oh,
themselves
the
after a
side kiss.
while.
Yeah, right,
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
right.
Mwah, mwah. I'm like, I'm not kissing you, so get out of her way. And so give me a hug, and all of a sudden, like, I had a Zippo. I always had a Zippo. That's what my thing was. He goes, I go, oh, tigaraki malaka. He goes, even cigarette malaka. I go, like, yeah. He goes, he started rolling his own. I'm like, wait a minute, the fuck? I'm like, why are you rolling cigarettes? I can't afford the goddamn cigarettes. Yeah, I'm rolling cheaper.
Oh, so
So,
you make your own, huh?
oh
Wow.
yeah, Greece they make it own right there on the spot. They're walking, filter in one mouth.
That's
I'm
that's
like,
very old school, yeah.
how the fuck are you
Well,
doing that? And they're on the phone too.
especially if you're $20 a pack, yeah, or $23 a pack, yeah. I
Yeah.
can imagine the home kits is a booming business there.
Oh god, yeah. Oh, yeah. So cigarettes coming in. Now, when they actually started affecting with the laws, now you cannot smoke at bars. It has to be smoking bars or non-smoking bars. People
Right.
freaked the fucked out. Like you
Mm,
couldn't smoke in a courthouse. I
mm.
remember being in a
A
courthouse.
courthouse?
Oh yeah, I remember when my mom got in an accident. A taxi ran her over, and she was suing the guy and everything. I was in a courtroom. And I'm smoking a cigarette. Like that cop looked at me and goes, "Like you want to kick his ass?" Like, "Oh, I'm going to kick his ass." What he
Mm,
did to my mother.
right.
And he goes, "I'm gonna stay right there so you don't do anything stupid, young man." He goes to me, and without saying the young man, I'm trying to translate in English, of
Yeah.
course. And he goes, "I'm staying here so you do nothing stupid." And he goes, he was smoking in uniform in the courthouse. Nothing. It's like
Mm,
common.
wow.
And eventually they says, no more smoking in the courthouse is the first thing went out.
Right.
Then it went into, okay, let's start smoking in coffee shops. That's one place every Greek hangs out. It's coffee shops. So when they got rid of those, I mean, like you have smoking shops, non-smoking
Right.
now. And when the vaping blew up in Greece, that's where it really blew up first. Oh, that was a different can of worms too.
Yeah. Smoked the
So
Trey smoked the first cigarette at 9. Man, you were a rebellious young man back then, weren't you?
oh yeah, I grew up around smoking. I was like kind of fascinated in a way. Like I used my mom
Mm.
smoking, it's like the smell of the cigarette. You know how you first lit a cigarette had that unique smell when you first light it up.
Uh, I'm sorry, run it by me. I
Yeah.
was reading her
Okay,
comment.
so when somebody lights up a cigarette the very first time, and you have the unique burn smell at first. After a couple minutes, it goes away.
Well, I've never smoked, so
I mean,
I
if
don't
you
have
ever
any.
been around a smoker, I'm saying.
Yeah, definitely, yeah,
Yeah. For you, you probably hate that smell. I was like, well, that kind of smells good because I was always around it.
right.
But I knew it was bad. So I remember my mom was in Greece one time, taking care of business for my mom. My dad was smart. He was buying a pack every week or 2 packs a week, pound stacking them.
Mhm.
I'm like, yeah,
As it started.
this is not too bad. This is not too bad. I'm like, and next thing I know, I'm like, my dad found out. He goes to me, "You got two choices here." He goes, "I'll give you two choices. You can continue smoking. And you can do that." He goes, "I can't stop you at this point. It's too late. Or you can throw the cigarettes and be a man, and we can maybe get, I will replace one bad habit with a good habit." He goes, "I took the good habit, and that is him, taking GPS in my ass everywhere I went at the
Right.
time." So, how common is smoking? You can get they have cigarette shops right outside of schools.
Yeah.
So you can walk out as a kid, go buy a cigarette and smoke on your lunch break.
Mhm.
They just won't do anything.
So
It's
there's
not
no
legal.
legal age for smoking in Greece?
It now it just got officially went in effect, but nobody's enforcing it still.
And what's the age?
I believe it is 16 or 17.
60.
I'll get back to you on that one. Yeah, let me get back
Wow.
to you. I found out
'Cause I think it's 21 here. I think, yeah.
it is
But again,
21
that
now. They
never
just moved
yeah,
it.
but then that never stopped any. Well, if I remember in college it was 21. But again, you would always have the senior who would go. The senior would go and get the beer and the cigarettes and bring
Mhm.
it back to the dorm. So all the freshmen and for everyone up would be able to get because someone always had had the idea to get the stuff and he would transport it back. So. But yeah, there were always ways people got around it. It wasn't like like to your point, it wasn't. It was although certainly the drinking and driving thing, that definitely picked up. I mean, they definitely started cracking down on that. Where you get caught drinking and driving, that's your license. I mean, forget
See, here's
about
the funny thing about
points and
that.
stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So Greece has a DUI like everybody else and everything.
Mhm.
They're very low. The reason I say that because they let you drink at a young age to teach you responsibility with
Yeah.
alcohol. Have a
Yeah.
great relationship. Some people can't handle alcohol at all.
That's what
Let's be
that's
honest.
that's why I brought it up because I knew I heard about and other cultures have done it also. I knew about that and that was but again that was a conversation that my wife and I had. Should we introduce them to alcohol younger? I mean, we don't drink at all. We're complete teetotalers, so we don't consume. But I'm not so hard that oh no one should be drinking. I don't say that either. And I know all of my daughters have drank at some point in time, and but it's definitely something that we kind of talked about. It's like should we just start gradually, into but because we just don't drink at all, we just never had it in the house. So and even now, it's like I don't like it when they bring over whiskey
Six
over to the
pack.
house
Yep.
and stuff like that. And so I'm like, yeah. Now I don't think they don't like beer at all. They like the gin, the bourbons, them
Oh, they hit
the
the hard stuff.
the wines and stuff. They're bougie, all of them. But none of them would drink a beer, or they think beer is disgusting. So they would never they would never go there with it. But yeah, but that was a conversation that we had. I mean, smoking was going to be completely out. I mean, but I had to admit, a couple of them they have sampled the weed, and now in New Jersey now it's legal even recreational use, and there's a dispensary just down the street from me here. And so again, we've had those conversations about. I think one time my daughter she had a cast on recently, and she went down to the dispensary and got some gummies for her pain. Because one thing I would say for sure, and again, this is something I had to mature a little bit on, is that certainly compared to there's so many drugs out there that and pain meds that a lot of people are hooked on and addicted to, and a lot of people swear by either the marijuana itself or the ingredients that are in it for pain management and things of that nature. That I have become open to them. Like I said, I got a sister who swears by it, and she used to take like dozens of pills a day for pain management, and now she got off all of them. So but she still does the weed. So again, that was a big influence on me in terms of okay, being a little bit more open minded to people who need it or think it could be beneficial to them. But those are conversations that we openly have, and I'm not so hard to say like, oh, we don't do that here, or I forbid you from. I mean, like I said, I'm not operating that stress, but I do want them to be smart about the decisions that they make, and I want to be here for them so they can make those kind of decisions. But
So funny story really
yeah.
fast. One of my friends who came to move to the country, he was trying to get a pack of cigarettes. He walked into this Spence City,
Mm.
didn't know what it was, so he buys this bar of chocolate.
Chocolate.
He ate the whole fucking thing at one shot. I walk in his house, like he's not answering his phone. I'm like, what is this guy, dad or something? I'm like, I'm freaking out here. So
Right.
I'm breaking the door down. I don't give a shit. So the
Right.
door's unlocked. I'm like, I'm like, what you eat, dude? Like food poisoning? I look over. I'm like, oh Christ Almighty! No, you did not do what I think you did.
Had
I'm
too
like,
much
this
hash
chocolate
and
bar. Like,
brownies, man.
oh,
Man.
he ate the whole bar, and it says
Man.
on the package, do not accept one roll at once. And it was a bar this big, bro, that big, one
Oh my
shot.
gosh. Wow.
Imagine kind
Now, what
of
is the status of weed in Greece now? Is it legal? Is it recreational? Medicinal? What
is
was
legal
or
still.
what was it back
People.
then, and what is it now? I guess.
Back then it was no, it was hush hush. Nobody really talked about that drug that much. It
Okay,
was like a voodoo kind of thing.
but was it like criminal? Like, if you got caught with it, would you be arrested, or like, I mean, with
Probably
the
a fine
yeah.
or something like that. Like nothing too crazy. Depends how much you got call with. They were at the time back then. Heroin, and crack was the biggest epidemic down there at the time. Like I
Oh,
remember
oh,
walking.
so Greece had its own drug and crack
Oh yeah.
epidemic. Around what time was
I
that?
mid '90s, early 2000s.
Okay, okay.
So I remember even going a couple places and walking past neighborhoods, and I see needles all over the place. And I remember my grandma holding me tight, says, "You don't touch anything. You stay next to me." Like that's how bad it got. You even
Mhm,
at parks that kids play, they'll find needles.
mhm.
That's how bad it was.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure they cleaned it up, but here's the rule in Greece. I had a friend of mine, my best friend's cousin, grew and smoked it. I go, dude, you're not gonna be scared someone can catch you? Like, how? I can throw this out the window right now. They cannot prove that was mine. If I know they're coming up my apartment, it's going off the balcony.
Mm,
You can't find it in the house. You can't prove it.
right.
Even if they say a cop came in and just, they have evidence. That was yours, hardcore evidence. That was you.
Mhm.
But if they don't find it in the apartment when they come in with the search warrant, nothing there.
But you would think, even from a capitalist mindset, like, if they legalize it, they can get taxes off it or whatever. Is that the mindset now? I mean, so
No,
as it
Greece has, and I had this conversation on one of my live streams on with
mhm.
Dr. Combi last Wednesday. It was like they believe weed is a gateway drug. So you might sell a
Same, yeah,
little weed,
same, yes,
yeah.
yeah,
So some people who can handle a little weed once in a while, and they're cool with that. But some people cannot handle it all. Some people go
mhm,
from smoking one little joint every couple weeks
right,
to going to weekly to daily to every hour to they need something even stronger.
right.
So that's why it's a very voodoo drug in Greece. It's
Yeah,
like
even here in the states, it's still on the federal. Like, all these states are legalizing it, but on the federal level, it's still a class one. So I mean, it's not, you know, but and that's going to have to come to a reckoning at some point in time, because I think a lot of people are starting to see the money. And like I said, America runs on money. It does not run on morals. It runs on money. So if they get to a point where they think, hey, this is going to be a boom revenue source for us, I think a lot of that stuff is going to be moved around. But for a lot of the same reasons, it's explained the same way. But
one thing
we
I
probably
can
need to,
speak about this for facts because I work in the health networks.
let me know. Especially, I'm curious in terms of how Greece certainly
Yeah, but in
deals
the
with that.
United States health networks, if you work for a hospital and you have a medical card, they won't accept you as an employee there because there's a health risk.
Oh
So
wow,
even if it's like even in Jersey, like St. Luke's and Lehigh Valley, I know they're in the beginning part of New Jersey's.
yeah.
They won't accept you as an employee, even if it's legalized. They don't care.
Oh
That's their
wow,
yeah, that's
that's
they're strict
crazy.
about it.
Uh, wow.
But I am going to find out about that because I have some people that
Yeah,
I
let me.
know
Yeah, I would like to
cops and
certainly
stuff like
know
that. I
more
know.
about drug laws in Greece, and certainly we can bring that up for later
Yeah, of
for
course.
later shows. But this is great. Can you bring up Lady Navoa? She had some her last comment. If we can bring that up as we start to wind down the as we start to wind down the show, we can bring up that last comment Lady Navoa dropped. And if not, I'll just read it. But I thank you very much for the comment. Now that was, I think, one of her last comments just before the end. But just the long story short was that I think she certainly blessed us, and this is one of I think this is probably our best show so far, and really appreciate. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the your comments. Hopefully, we're creating a space for safe place. Again, we do want to at some point in time because I know there was a lot of back and forth in the chat, and people certainly get have very passionate feelings when it certainly comes to things like corporal punishment and the like. We do want to open up the show eventually to have people join if they want to join on the panel. We do want to have open forum and discussion. Looking cultural perspective. So as you see just from my intro, we are looking for different dynamics, in different cultures. So if you know someone who's Asian or Indian or Arabic or whatever, we certainly invite those folks who have a different cultural perspective to add to this conversation because the idea is about sharing cultural perspective, looking for common for understanding and mutual ground, the gray area is what we're looking for. But we will be opening up the show to conversation in future shows. And I think this one again talk about growing up, but we spend a lot of time on family also. So I don't know if we want to um, move on to the next one, which is that's the hot one, the religion one, or do we want to stick with the family topic since we covered so much ground already?
You know
But
what I'm thinking? Because you mentioned it.
yeah.
I think maybe because we're gonna be on a what fourth episode next week, correct?
Yes, that next week will be
Why
episode
don't we
4.
do like the open mic that day and have people just come in and ask us questions, and then we can re-pick up the
That'd be
next week
fantastic. Yeah, I think that'd
and
be
give a little break on like we have three topics we can talk about. All three we can go over and then come
yeah.
back to it.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Yeah, we'll definitely hook up later, and we can make sure we got that down tightly. But yeah.
Yeah.
So next week, for those who would like to join us, and again, we appreciate those who are in the chat and that shares your perspectives. We love to invite you up and share and ask and whatnot. But I really the comments by Lady Naboa, who again she's so supportive in these spaces, and I really appreciate that. That means a lot coming from you. And we're just trying to be, get better at this, and definitely, I didn't mention earlier, if you're stopping through, please hit the like button, and again, if you're not a member of the BMU network, again, this is the BMU network is really growing. To we have a show almost every day of the week, something. So we have Talk That Talk Tuesdays. We have the Sports Wednesday show, followed by JT's show, and then we're also going to have Mandrell and Shushu coming back with their show on Wednesday nights. Then we have the Friday night barbershop. The we have a show on Saturday nights with Miss Jenny that comes on, and then we're filling the Sunday evening spot. So we have a lot of content that Black Man is sharing, and there's more shows in the works that are coming up. So he's really trying to create a platform where we can have all different types of discussions and bring content that we hope that you find valuable, and we want to be able to be a benefit to the space. And again, have conversation, uh, develop understanding. Let's stop shouting at one another and blaming. Let's really get to the heart of some problems so we have mutual understanding. Because at the end of the day, we're all human beings. We're all gray in some way or the other. And let's find that common ground with one another, and let's start, having safe places for people to talk. So that's my purpose in being in the space, and certainly grooming's, certainly co-signing that, and I'm just pledged because this was his idea. He had reached out and asked me, did I want to do this? Would I do this show with him? So I appreciate him considering me to share this platform with him. But this is his brainchild, and I'm enjoying the ride, and I'm enjoying being edified, certainly in the space. So that was my final thoughts. Grooming, you want to close us out
Yeah, I want to
here
plug in
with
a
your
couple
final
things too.
thoughts?
Also,
Sure thing.
I am co-streaming this on my channel too. Please hit the like and sub button. It'll be great. Appreciate it. I stream twice a week, Wednesdays and Saturdays. Saturdays is the hangout. We just bullshit and have fun. Wednesdays, we're going to hit some serious topics. Hopefully, some of you guys can join us there. This week, we are talking about how did sex destroy a man. So if you have time, please jump in. BMU, my man, I cannot say any good things about you. I always have some bad things, but it's all good things. This guy is incredible. One of the nicest and greatest guys out there. He does the hard work and helps me and anybody else have a platform to talk about stuff, but people don't want to be talked about. They're scared. So come up, have a conversation. Next week, we're open the tables. Let's see. Have a conversation with us. Crack a beer. Have fun with us. This is for fun. Don't get too uptight. Except that's all I have for now.
Awesome. Well, again, he is the Grooming and Reviews, a.k.a. the Ghost of Sparta, a.k.a. Peter, a.k.a. Panagiotis. I'm Mr. Bennett. This is The Gray Area. We invite you to come and join us next time. For all you, enjoy your week. Be safe. God bless. We'll see you next time. Peace out.
Fast lane when I pass in the street, bag of money in the passenger seat. Simcoe's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down, cause the coast racking up the flight miles. So high, I might never come down, so what, this is my lifestyle. Wait a minute, work hard for the car, so that's why it's all tinted. Wait a minute, had a real late night, woke up with my head spinning out in Nashville. It's been mad real, I need sunglasses, I need Advil. I like fake moves, and my cash real. I like first place, you're in last still. Fast lane when I pass in the street, bag of money in the passenger seat. Simcoe's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down, cause the coast racking up the flight miles. So high, I might never come down, so what, this is my lifestyle.
Look, pocket rocket in my pocket, please don't make me pop it. All these boys just wanna copy the style, tell them niggas stop it. Whoa, it's my destiny, feeling like Latoya, like it found me my Beyonce, and she shotgun in the cockpit. Grinding with the team, making C notes. In my pocket still full of green, call it CeeLo. Alligator watch on me, Tim Tebow. And these haters love to watch me like Tebow. Look, I don't take L's, I just learn a lesson. Before I count the M's, always come up.